Chapter 552. In Shi Tianhao's impression, his third senior brother was silent most of the time, cold and resolute. Even when he was comprehending the plain path of simplicity for a while, his bearing was calm and composed. He was rarely as conflicted and awkward as he was now. Wang Lin looked at Shi Tianhao and slowly asked, "Little junior brother, did you make an agreement with him?" "Yes, not long ago." Shi Tianhao nodded. "I was originally going to defeat him back then, but the Qin Emperor suggested that the ancient Sky Dragon Domain's Dragon Arena be opened a month later. At that time, the victor can enter the Dragonstone Gate to retrieve the treasures, so we made the agreement a month later." Xiao Yin nodded on the side. "That's right. This matter has already spread across the world. Before they even fought, it has already become the most anticipated competition in the Divine Land." He smiled coldly. "This time, little junior brother will seek justice for him under the gazes of everyone. He will beat up that stinking brat with a pair of yellow eyes until he looks for his teeth all over the ground." Beside Xiaoyan, Yu Hongyan burst into laughter. The green-robed girl who stood silently beside him also smiled. Shi Tianhao clapped his hands and laughed. "Ha, yellow eyes. First senior brother, that's a wonderful metaphor." As everyone laughed, they suddenly saw Wang Lin become even more awkward. They could not help but find it more and more strange. Shi Tianhao asked, "Third senior brother, what's wrong?" Wang Lin's lips moved as he said in a low voice, "I blinded one of his eyes." Xiao Yin and Shi Tianhao immediately opened their mouths wide together, staring blankly at Wang Lin in front of them. They were speechless for quite a while. Everyone looked at one another, only returning to their senses after quite a while. Xiao Yin patted Wang Lin's shoulder. "Well done, third brother." As he spoke, he even gave him a thumbs up. Shi Tianhao also cupped his hands towards Wang Lin solemnly and said, "Third senior brother, thank you." He carefully examined Wang Lin with his magic power and divine sense, and immediately found that Wang Lin was also injured at the moment, and the injury was not light. Wang Lin let out a rare sigh. "If I had known that you had a duel with him, I wouldn't have fought him." He was not a pretentious person, nor would he be afraid of a fight. He just felt that in a month, when Shi Tianhao and Shi Tianyi fought, Shi Tianyi would be blinded by him. Even if Shi Tianhao won the fight, he would still be criticized by others. Wang Lin firmly believed that his junior brother, in a fair and square battle with Shi Tianyi, would definitely win. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Don't worry. Although Shi Tianyi lost his left eye, his strength might not have decreased by much. He might even have improved." Everyone was stunned. Wang Lin was the first to react, and a trace of understanding flashed in his eyes. "Master, you mean?" Lin Feng nodded, and a slightly mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "What's more, this person's strongest magical power is not his eyes, but the power he took from your junior brother." A cold light flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. "He interrupted the divine light on my bridge of helplessness?" "Yes, that is his biggest trump card." Lin Feng chuckled. "That power doesn't belong to him, so he can't control it freely." Wang Lin remained silent. Shi Tianhao and the others on the side looked curiously at him and Lin Feng. Seeing this, Wang Lin immediately repeated the process of his fight with Shi Tianyi in detail. Lin Feng commented on the key points one by one. Shi Tianyi's soul is far stronger than cultivators of the same level. He also specializes in the soul arts of Taishu Temple. This is his strength. He cultivates the immovable King Buddha body of Buddhism, which strengthens his originally weak body. His physique is also very strong. Although he is not as strong as you, he is not weak. Shi Tianyi's magical powers mainly originate from Taishu Temple, which includes powerful spells like the Grand Devil Suppression Charm. But this is not the main point. Lin Feng said silently, "The main point is that he may have learned other spells from Taishu Temple. The above are all external. He has two advantages. One is his dual pupils. He was born with it. His left eye can see through lies and discern truth. He can see through the flaws in his opponent's magical powers. But his left eye was completely blinded by your third brother, so he can ignore it. Lin Feng looked at Shi Tianhao and said slowly, his right eye can create illusions and even simulate a fake world to fool your senses. Your third brother's soul is not weaker than his, so he is easy to deal with. If you were to face him, you have to be careful of this move first. Shi Tianhao's expression was solemn as he nodded. Lin Feng smiled. Relax. It is not difficult to break the power of his right eye's dual pupils. Other than that, there is his last and strongest trump card. Lin Feng's expression was calm, his tone indifferent. That is what he took from you, Tianhao. Wang Lin said from the side. It was the divine light that broke my bridge of helplessness in the end. It was because of this attack that I was heavily injured. To be fair, Shi Tianyi is not weak. I blinded one of his eyes, and his last attack also seriously injured me. Looking at the battle situation at that time, it was actually a draw. However, my injury can be healed in the future, but the power of his left eye's dual pupils is forever disabled. Lin Feng looked at Wang Lin and smiled. Little Lin, there is no need to belittle yourself. Our sect's foundation is the Tao Te Ching of heaven and earth. You can only start to cultivate the second chapter of the four symbols heaven opening scripture when you reach the later stage of the golden elixir. After cultivating it, even if you do not form your nascent soul, your strength will steadily increase, and you will be stronger than you are now. Wang Lin nodded. However, that divine light is really sharp. Shi Tianhao frowned slightly and looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng said slowly, Tianhao, you are born to be a sovereign. When you were born to be in the middle stage of foundation building. Your body will naturally open your sea of qi and build a sovereign spirit platform. A sovereign pill cauldron will be built on the sovereign spirit platform. When you form your core, you will form a purple core and give birth to a vision. Your future will be incomparably bright. Other than building a solid foundation that cannot be more solid, when you form your Yuanying, you will also have special gains. When Lin Feng said this, he stretched out his palm, and a light suddenly lit up on his palm. The light was black and white. Under Lin Feng's control, it was firmly fixed on his palm and did not extend outwards. However, the divine light shot out in all directions, and it was extremely glorious, shaking the entire void. Within the black and white divine light, there was a faint chanting of the great Tao of heaven and earth, shaking the surroundings. Wang Lin was shocked. Master, although the appearance was different, and the specific power and conception were also completely different, Wang Lin could still recognize that the black and white divine light on Lin Feng's palm was similar to the divine light that Shi Tianyi used to injure him at the last moment. Lin Feng said slowly, the divine light of creation is the power that should belong to Tianhao. Build a sovereign spirit platform, condense a sovereign pill cauldron, form a purple core and give birth to a vision, and finally successfully form a nascent soul. It was truly the creation of heaven and earth. It was like a child favored by heaven, carrying the great Tao of heaven and earth, and possessing a powerful and unique power. The divine light of creation was not a single one. Different people could cultivate different divine lights of creation. Each divine light of creation had different forms and functions, and they were all unique. The divine light of creation was born after a cultivator formed a nascent soul. In the beginning, it was powerful, but there was a limit. However, this divine light would become stronger as the cultivator's cultivation increased. This is the most mysterious and profound existence in the world, as well as the most powerful and profound existence. Even now, there are still many mysteries of the divine creation light, waiting for future generations to continuously explore. Even places like the Void Temple are still in the exploration and research stage regarding the divine creation light. With a special technique, one could separate a trace of the divine light and condense it into a crystal. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and the others. The so-called Dharma destruction jade that Marquis Jing Huan showed just now was actually a crystallized form of the divine light of creation called the Supreme Dharma Destruction Divine Light. Although the divine light of creation was rare, and the sovereign spirit platform had not appeared many times since ancient times, it was not unique. In the history of the Divine Land, there had been cultivators who had built a sovereign spirit platform, condensed a sovereign pill cauldron, formed a purple core, and finally obtained the divine light of creation after forming a nascent soul. It had the profound power to destroy all the techniques in the world, and it was called the Supreme Dharma Destruction Divine Light. Some of the divine light condensed into a crystal and was preserved. After a few twists and turns, it finally landed in Marquis Jing Huan's hands. The divine light that Shi Tianyi used to break the bridge of helplessness is another kind of divine light of creation. It also has its own unique uses, Lin Feng said silently. The divine light of creation that originally belonged to vast heaven. Shi Tianhao sighed softly. Beside him, Xiao Yan's fists abruptly clenched tightly, turning his head to look at Wang Lin, repeating what he said just now. Beautifully fought. Wang Lin took a deep breath and did not speak. His gaze was cold as he slowly turned to look at the void behind him. Although he knew that the space in the void battlefield was chaotic, he still coldly stared at the place where he had fought Shi Tianyi. A faint smile appeared on Shi Tianhao's face. He said softly, "It's fine. Even if I fell from the clouds to the bottom of the valley, the current me has risen again. I will only be stronger than before. And I will definitely take back what belongs to me." Lin Feng smiled faintly. "You're right. Someone owes us something, so we must return it." His gaze swept across his disciples. "Something like the divine light of creation can be seized, but there are many harsh conditions. But as long as the path is not blocked, there will always be a way out." Of course, there were also very strict requirements for those who obtained the divine light of creation that did not originally belong to them. Very few people could meet these requirements. When Shi Tianhao and the others heard this, their eyes lit up. Xiao Yan even sneered. "Shi Tianyi, how much did you eat? Spit it out." Lin Feng looked at them with a smile. Xiao Zhen'er's attention was mostly on Xiao Yan. But behind Xiao Zhen'er stood an old man. It was the primordial spirit cultivator, Gu Xian, who had escorted her to the void battlefield. Right now, Gu Xian's attention was all on Lin Feng. He was shocked. "It looks easy, but he also has the divine light of creation. If he did not seize it from someone else as he said, then doesn't that mean he is also the one who established the foundation of supremacy?" Xiao Yan suddenly came to his senses. He turned his body slightly and smiled at Wang Lin. "I'm confused. Third junior brother, this is Zhen'er. I have mentioned her to you before." He turned to look at the girl in a green robe, who was standing there silently and smiling like a water lily. He said, "Zhen'er, this is my third junior brother, Wang Lin." Xiao Zhen'er curtsied. "Fellow Taoist Wang Zhen'er greets you. I have often heard Brother Xiao Yan mention that you are the most hard-working and determined person in the sect." Wang Lin put on a serious expression and said, "Lady Zhen'er, I am Wang Lin. Nice to meet you." Chapter 553. Wang Lin looked at Xiao Zhen'er and said, "This is the person that eldest senior brother has been thinking about?" The girl's slender figure stood quietly in the pitch-black void. She was like a green lotus that bloomed in the mortal world. She was refined and had a unique aura. This girl seemed to be born from the spirit of heaven and earth, so beautiful that it was dazzling. But standing next to Xiao Yan, she sometimes showed the expression of a little girl, with a hint of playfulness. It could be seen that she was a cold person, but when she was with Xiao Yan, she was gentle and gentle, even when she was with Xiao Yan's peers. Wang Lin nodded in his mind, such an outstanding girl, an eldest senior brother is a good match. He cupped his fists and said with a smile, eldest senior brother, you are just saving me some face. Among all the disciples, I have the worst talent, so I have to put in more effort and hope that hard work can make up for it. Xiao Zhener smiled and said, You are too humble, Brother Wang. The ancient brush spirit behind her also nodded. Although it was the first time they met Wang Lin, from their conversation just now, the late stage of golden elixir against the Yuanying stage, and he blinded one of Shi Tianyi's double pupils. This kind of battle record was enough to make even the ancient brush spirit, who was in the Yuan Shen stage, look at it. Plus, the ancient brush spirit glanced at Lin Feng and said, This person has very high standards. If you are not an outstanding talent, I am afraid you will not be able to catch his eyes. With a smile on his face, Lin Feng calmly watched the conversation between his disciples. He looked at the ancient brush spirit and asked, What do you plan to do next? The ancient brush spirit looked at Xiao Zhener and thought for a moment. This time, I came out to protect Zhener in the void battlefield, to pass the lightning tribulation and form the Yuanying stage. Now that I have achieved my goal, Xiao Yan was shocked. Zhener, you are going back? Xiao Zhener frowned and looked at the brush spirit. Elder Brush, I want to go back later. The ancient brush spirit glanced between Lin Feng and Xiao Yan. You've just formed your nascent soul. When you go back, it's not only to nourish your body, but also to cultivate higher-level Taoism and supernatural powers. It's best not to delay. He paused for a moment before continuing. After this round of nourishing and cultivation, you should enter the training period. When that time comes, you will be able to travel freely. Lin Feng waved his hand, looked at Xiao Zhener and said, You can decide for yourself. With a flick of his sleeve, a jet-black saber appeared in his hand. The aura of a primordial emperor emanated from it. It was the primordial spirit treasure, the ancient emperor saber. Lin Feng casually passed the ancient emperor blade to Xiao Yan beside him, lightly saying, Even though this treasure isn't from your ancient emperor's lineage, it still carries the legacy of the ancient emperor's power. With the help of this treasure, there shouldn't be any obstacles in your nascent soul stage cultivation. Xiao Yan was pleasantly surprised. He looked at Xiao Zhener and saw that Xiao Zhener's face also revealed a happy expression. The ancient brush spirit saw this and smiled bitterly. But, Master, this treasure belongs to that guy. Xiao Yan hesitated after the surprise. Lin Feng smiled. It's okay. He flicked the ancient emperor blade with his finger. You obeyed an original infant stage cultivator and willingly allowed yourself to be refined by him. The only reason was that he had inherited your original owner's Dao technique and promised to help you improve. Am I wrong? The ancient emperor saber hummed and a majestic middle-aged man spoke. That's right. This person received the ancient emperor seal. I also think highly of his potential, so I'm willing to be refined by him. Xiao Zhener and the spirit of the ancient brush heard this and suddenly understood that after the ancient times, there was a powerful cultivator who found the inscriptions left behind by the ancient emperor. Through the inscriptions, he comprehended some of the ancient emperor's teachings and then refined this ancient emperor's blade. After this cultivator died, the ancient emperor's seal and ancient emperor's saber were left behind and obtained by Marquis Jing Huan. Lin Feng said, Before us is the ancient emperor lineage. Help her first. When she reaches the primordial spirit level, you will have a chance to reach the incarnation level. If you follow Marquis Jing Huan without the complete Taoism heritage, you will stay at the spirit nurturing level for the rest of your life. The ancient emperor saber hummed again and said, I am willing to return to the ancient emperor lineage. Whether or not she reaches the primordial spirit level, I will help her cultivate and be refined by her. At the end of the day, Marquis Jing Huan had not reached the primordial spirit level. The ancient emperor's saber following him was not a true submission, but more of a cooperative relationship. When primordial spirit level cultivators refined Dharma treasures, the Dharma treasures could not remove the connection between them, unless the Mahayana Dharma treasure chose to reincarnate. When cultivators below the primordial spirit level refined Dharma treasures, the Dharma treasures had a lot of autonomy. Although it was troublesome to remove the traces, it was not impossible. He had his own consciousness. After observing Xiao Zhen'er carefully, he knew that she was from the ancient emperor lineage. Seeing that she was only a golden elixir cultivator, but she was escorted by the ancient brush spirit, a primordial spirit expert, he could be sure that the power behind her was not small. The ancient emperor lineage did not wither, but flourished instead. In that case, if he followed Xiao Zhen'er, even if she could not reach the primordial spirit level, the power behind her would definitely have primordial spirit experts. The ancient emperor saber would then return to the ancient emperor lineage, and there would be hope for it to become an incarnation-level Dharma treasure. In fact, the main reason he followed Marquis Jing Huan was that Marquis Jing Huan promised to find the complete ancient emperor lineage with the ancient emperor seal and help him reach the next level. Xiao Zhen'er looked at the ancient emperor saber and smiled. She would not covet Lin Feng's Dharma treasure. In fact, after she successfully reached nascent soul and returned home, her family might give her a Dharma treasure to protect her. It might not be at home, but as long as she went out, she would definitely have a Dharma treasure to protect her. What she's happy about is that this way she can spend more time with Xiao Yan. Shi Tianhao smiled and said, "Eldest senior brother, you have to thank big sister Zhen'er properly. Master said that after we form our nascent souls, each of us will have a magic treasure. You haven't even formed your nascent soul yet, but you already have one." Xiao Yan chuckled. Lin Feng looked at him and smiled. "The ancient emperor's saber is not suitable for you. I am only giving it to you temporarily, mainly to help Miss Zhen'er cultivate. After you reach nascent soul, Master will specially choose a Dharma treasure for you." Xiao Zhen'er quickly said, "Senior, you can call me Zhen'er." She turned to the ancient brush spirit. "Elder Brush, I won't stay for long." The ancient brush spirit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What is this? Is this a betrothal gift?" Lin Feng really didn't have any thoughts in this area. It's just that seeing Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen'er reunite after a long time, but also have to separate very quickly, both of them are very reluctant to part with each other, so he'll just casually help them out. Although, if one were to really talk about betrothal gifts, a magical treasure as a betrothal gift was really not considered light. But for Lin Feng's current wealth, he didn't care much about a spirit-nurturing grade Dharma treasure. His original goal of getting a Dharma treasure for each personal disciple was no longer difficult. Seeing his indifferent look, the ancient brush spirit sighed in his heart. He doesn't even care about Dharma treasures. This Xianmen sect leader is indeed very arrogant. You can see the big picture from the small. He and his disciple, Xianmen Tianzong, are probably more powerful than many people estimate. Such a powerful person, there was no news of him before, and he rose up without any warning. It is unbelievable. Lin Feng looked at the ancient brush spirit and said, "Zhen'er and my disciple have reunited after a long time, so it is normal for them to have a good chat. You don't have to worry, I will protect her. As for you, I will not stay any longer. It is not that I am being rude, but I have a message that I need you to bring back to the leader of the ancient emperor orthodoxy." The ancient brush spirit and Xiao Zhen'er were stunned. The ancient brush spirit straightened his expression. "Please speak, Xianmen sect leader. I will bring the message." Lin Feng put his hands behind his back and stood in the air. His voice was calm. The ancient emperor was kind and benevolent. He deposed the king of the underworld and led the human race to repel the invasion of the demon race. But he was injured because of this, and was taken advantage of by others. It is indeed regrettable. But the rule of the human sovereign can no longer be repeated. Even if the ancient emperor was reborn, it would be the same. What stopped him was not someone or some people, but the times. Lin Feng said calmly, "The times have changed. Today is no longer the immemorial age or the ancient age. For the human race to be able to develop to this day, the vast majority of human emperors have made important contributions. But the era of one person ruling the heavens, his words carrying enormous weight, and all living beings bowing to him is gone forever. It is not that people are ungrateful and forgetful, but it is the inevitable development of history. The ancient brush spirit and Xiao Zhen'er both fell silent. After a long time, the ancient brush spirit slowly said, "I will not comment on what the Xian Men sect leader has said, but I will definitely bring your message." Lin Feng faintly smiled. "If that's the case, then we'll part ways here." He waved his sleeve and took all his disciples and Xiao Zhen'er away, disappearing into the air. He had already left the void battlefield and returned to the divine land of the boundless world. The ancient brush spirit stayed where he was, thinking back on everything that had happened today, and he could not help but sigh. Lin Feng took everyone back to Jing Mountain. On the way, he observed Xiao Zhen'er and found that although the girl looked a little dazed, her emotions were calm and indifferent. She was not affected by what Lin Feng had said before. She had never supported her family's original idea, it was just a bond of kinship that bound her by blood. Lin Feng faintly smiled and did not bother with him anymore. His divine sense turned towards Wang Lin and saw that Wang Lin was currently sitting cross-legged, calmly cultivating and using all his strength to heal his injuries. Shi Tianyi's divine light of creation had cut off his bridge of helplessness, and his injuries were not light. "Little Lin, calm down and figure out the truth. Not only will it help you heal, but it will also help you improve your cultivation," Lin Feng said as he pointed his finger and passed the Tao of the Four Symbols Heaven Opening Book to Wang Lin. Wang Lin's body shook, but he did not say anything. He focused on studying the Tao, and the aura around him became more and more profound. An extremely high-spirited aura shot up from his body, as if quantitative change had led to qualitative change. Wang Lin's body began to change. Lin Feng saw this and shook his head, laughing. "Good boy, you did not disappoint me." Chapter 554. Wang Lin closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. White light and black qi surged above his head and gradually condensed into an illusory scene of light and shadow. In the light and shadow, the world changed and chaos opened. The four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind surged and returned to stability. The clear and turbid qi were separated and the image of the beginning of heaven and earth was projected. After the heaven and earth were created, the light and shadow kept rising and finally turned into a huge door. The door was half black and half white. The left side was as black as ink. There were many relief sculptures on the door, but it was daunting. There were Yiksha and Yama, hungry ghosts, mountains of knives and seas of fire. It was like hell. The right side of the door was as white as jade. There were also many sculptures on the door, but they were flowers, mountains, rivers, and thousands of lives. It was full of vitality, like a lively world. Seeing this, Lin Feng smiled and clapped his hands. 2 streams of spiritual qi flew out and poured into the illusory scene of light and shadow that Wang Lin had visualized. One of the spiritual qi was the destructive qi of death from the stone of death. The other was the spiritual qi of the first transformation of Lin Feng's magic treasure bell of creation, the gate of life. It was the yin and yang life and death formation, the 2 extreme powers of life and death in the 6 paths of life and death. The addition of these 2 streams of spiritual qi immediately helped Wang Lin to quickly deduce his supernatural power. The half-black and half-white door suddenly opened. After the door opened, the illusory scene of light and shadow showed a complete small world. It was vivid and lifelike. However, as the light and shadow flashed, the world also changed back and forth between hell of the dead and the world of the living. Lin Feng smiled and looked at it. He saw that in the depths of this small world there was another door, but it had not formed yet. This door is still not the end. In Lin Feng's divine sense, there was a bang and a light and shadow illusion appeared, forming a small world of life and death that was exactly the same as Wang Lin's. This was a simulation of the supernatural power that Wang Lin had created with his own supernatural power. He was already a primordial divinity cultivator, and the Four Symbols Heaven Opening Book was a Tao technique that he had created. Thousands of possibilities were fused into one body, so he only needed to take a look at Wang Lin's divine art to know its foundation. Lin Feng did not need to cultivate this divine power. He only needed to deduce it with his own Tao. There is another door at the end of the small world of life and death. After opening it, there will be another small world. A total of 4 doors, 4 worlds? The disciples of the sect cultivated the Four Symbols Heaven Opening Scripture, and each had a different understanding. Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi were closer to each other, both from the inside to the outside. Shi Tianhao, on the other hand, was from the outside to the inside. But speaking of which, the paths, skills, and divine abilities that the 3 of them comprehended were all divided into 4 symbols. The divine abilities were connected to each other, yet independent. Wang Lin, on the other hand, was using the 4 heavenly gates to visualize the 4 heavenly gates. The 4 heavenly worlds were linear. Moving forward in a straight line, after opening the first gate, the second gate could be opened, just like the 4-step. Each step was a flight of stairs, followed by a different scenery. Compared to Xiao Yan and the others, it was impossible to say who was better. They all came from the same source. There were thousands of great Taos, but in the end they all reached the same destination. With Lin Feng's help, Wang Lin soon succeeded in refining his first small world. He opened his eyes, which flashed with a terrifying radiance. Lin Feng looked at him and nodded with a smile. Not bad at all. Little Lin, looks like you'll have to go first. Wang Lin also smiled faintly and said, cultivating the 4 Symbols Heaven Opening Scripture makes me feel enlightened. Lin Feng smiled and said, that's because you've already accumulated enough. As they spoke, the group returned to Jade Capital Mountain. Once they reached the top of the mountain, Lin Feng waved his sleeves and let everyone down. When Xiao Yan and the others landed on the ground and saw the scene before them, they were shocked. They saw a young man in purple standing in front of them, looking at them with a smile. He bowed and said, welcome back, Master, Senior Brother, and Senior Sister. The young man in purple was Yang Qing, who had stayed on Jade Capital Mountain. Behind him was a group of second-generation disciples. They lined up neatly and bowed to Lin Feng and the others. Welcome back, Ancestral Master. Welcome back, Master, Senior Uncle, and Junior Uncle. Lin Feng also smiled and looked at everyone. He chuckled and said, dispense with the formalities. His figure gradually disappeared, leaving only his voice in the air. In a while, come to the dark heaven eternal light grotto to find me. Everyone hurriedly bowed and sent Lin Feng off. After bowing, Wang Lin turned to look at Yang Qing. He saw that Yang Qing had a slightly ashamed look on his face. Third Senior Brother, you've suffered. When Wang Lin had been lost in the void battlefield, Yang Qing had always felt guilty. After returning to the mountain, he had redoubled his efforts in cultivation. In addition to cultivation, he had been worried about Wang Lin's safety. Wang Lin looked at him and shook his head solemnly. No, 5th Junior Brother, I should be the one thanking you. Just as Lin Feng had said, Yang Qing had chosen to rescue Wang Lin's parents and clan with all his might. This made Wang Lin feel even more grateful to him. Yang Qing then greeted Xiao Yan and the others. Shi Tianhao smiled and said, 5th Senior Brother, you just said that Master, Senior Brother, and Senior Sister are welcome to return to the mountain. Am I not welcome? How can that be? Yang Qing smiled but did not explain. Whether it was Yang Qing or Yu Hongyan, they both called Shi Tianhao by his name. They had never addressed him as Junior Brother. In their hearts, Shi Tianhao was more of a Senior Brother. After greeting each other, They turned to look at the group of second-generation disciples. They saw that at the front of the crowd were Li Xingfei, Su Yunxing, Ing Luojia, Lu Xiaofeng, Fatty Yanwei, and Xiao Huan. Intentionally or unintentionally, the crowd had placed Li Xingfei in the most conspicuous position. Lin Feng had now trained his broadcasting skills to a certain level. It was difficult to transmit transcendence energy in the void battlefield, so he could not do a live broadcast. He used a recording method to record the process of the battle between Wang Lin and Shi Tianyi. He used his transcendence energy to create light and shadow to leave traces. Just now, after leaving the void battlefield, on the way back to the mountain, Lin Feng broadcast the entire process of the battle between Wang Lin and Shi Tianyi to the disciples on the mountain. Everyone was dazzled. It was only at this moment that they realized that their silent, cold, and rarely seen third martial uncle was such a ruthless character. Usually, Wang Lin focused on his own cultivation and rarely went out. He had left the mountain for a long time. As a result, in the impression of the disciples, his presence was extremely faint. Some people even laughed in their hearts that Li Xingfei had no master at all. Although Li Xingfei had a refined appearance and outstanding talent, she was very particular about how she treated people. She was quite popular, so more people felt sorry for her. They felt that if she had acknowledged someone else as her master, it would have been better than following the elusive Wang Lin. But at this moment, after seeing Wang Lin kill the Yuanian cultivator in the void battlefield with a flick of his finger, and even gain the upper hand in the battle against the outstanding Shi Tianyi, everyone was immediately in awe. As they lined up to welcome Wang Lin and the others who had returned, everyone subconsciously let Li Xingfei sit in the center. When Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, and Yu Hongyan saw this, they looked at each other and smiled. They also let Wang Lin sit in the center. This brother of theirs had experienced the disaster in the void battlefield and narrowly escaped death. Now that he had finally returned, it was indeed worthy of celebration. Wang Lin looked at Xiao Yan and the other two, then looked at Li Xingfei and the other disciples in front of him. His expression was no longer as cold, and there was an additional trace of warmth in his eyes. After leaving the void battlefield, Wang Lin's temperament gradually changed. He was no longer as cold and murderous, and gradually returned to his calm and gentle state, returning to his original state. However, now that his dermic Tao had improved, he gradually did as he pleased. Even if his state of mind changed, it would not affect his cultivation. These things are for all of you. Wang Lin looked at Li Xingfei and the others. After thinking for a while, he did not say anything. Instead, he used his transcendence energy, and almost 100 jade-green crystals flew out of the underworld pearl. These crystals were produced in the void battlefield, and they could effectively help cultivators in their cultivation, especially for cultivators with lower cultivation bases. The effect was especially good. At this moment, everyone was excited because they had witnessed Wang Lin's iron-blooded achievements. After receiving the crystals from Wang Lin, they felt even more excited and motivated. Wang Lin looked at them and lightly nodded. Cultivate well. He glanced at Li Xingfei, and after using his transcendence energy and divine sense to detect the movement of the spiritual qi in her body, he said, "One of the meridians has gone astray. Pay attention to the adjustment." Li Xingfei bowed and accepted the instruction. "I was too impatient in my cultivation." Wang Lin nodded. "In the future, I will spend most of my time on the mountain. If you have any questions, just come to me." He paused for a moment before slowly saying, "I've troubled you while I was away." He had already learned from Lin Feng that his parents were now living in Mortal Forest residence. Every day Li Xingfei took care of them. His senior and junior brothers often went to visit, and Yang Qing went the most frequently. Li Xingfei hurriedly said, "Master, when you have something to do, I will help you. This is what I should do." Wang Lin nodded. "Go back to Mortal Forest residence first, nourish your spiritual qi, and figure out the dermic Tao. Xiao Yan and the rest also greeted their respective disciples, then let everyone disperse like this. Then, they went to the mysterious sky-time grotto heaven to meet Lin Feng. As Xiao Zhener walked, she looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile, "Brother Xiao Yan has become someone's master. Your two disciples are also quite extraordinary." Xiao Yan smiled. "The thin one is fine, but the fat one is a bit noisy, and his temperament is not stable." Seeing the smile on Xiao Zhener's face getting wider, he immediately said in a bad mood, "I know what you are laughing at. You are laughing at me because my temperament is not stable, and yet I teach others. I mislead them." Xiao Zhener put her hands behind her back and laughed crisply. "Zhener didn't say that. But Brother Xiao Yan, it is true that you are becoming more and more self-aware. You are smart." Xiao Yan lightly scratched the bridge of her nose. "But when it comes to being someone's master, I am really not very good at it." Xiao Zhener's face slightly blushed. This was what they used to do when they were young, and now Xiao Yan was used to it. So be it, and in front of Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and the others. Even though the girl had always been generous, she was still a bit shy. At this time, Xiao Yan also reacted. He pretended to cough as if nothing had happened, but in fact, he secretly looked to the side with the corner of his eyes. He saw that although Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Yang Qing all had a smile on their faces, they all looked to the side and pretended not to see it. Only Shi Tianhao stared with his big black eyes. Not only was he enjoying watching, but there was also a big smile on his face. When he saw Xiao Yan looking over, he simply clapped and said with a smile, "Good job, big brother." Chapter 555. Xiao Yan looked at Shi Tianhao, feeling angry and funny at the same time. He turned his head and said to Xiao Zhener, "Zhener, have you ever thought that the little baby who was as cute as a jade carving in the past has now grown into such a mischievous youth?" As soon as he said this, Xiao Zhener and Shi Tianhao both smiled. Their eyes were filled with nostalgia. When they met at the beginning of the year, it was in Wuzhou City when Lin Feng took Xiao Yan as his disciple. At that time, Shi Tianhao had just become Lin Feng's disciple and was still a little boy less than 4 years old, white and cute. In fact, the current Shi Tianhao's appearance was also extremely outstanding. His smooth black hair draped over his shoulders. His lips were red and his teeth were white. His face was extraordinarily handsome. Although he was only 12 or 13 years old, he was already very tall and looked very handsome. Since they parted, only 4 years had passed in the vast thousand world. But because they were cultivating in the accelerated time grotto heaven, Shi Tianhao and Xiao Zhener hadn't seen each other for many years. Xiao Zhener smiled and said, "Tianhao is now a young heaven's favorite." That shocked the entire divine land. Shi Tianhao smiled, but before he could say anything, Xiao Yan next to him said coldly, "What young heaven's favorite? He's still the same as when he was little, still a foodie." On the side, Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Yang Qing all smiled, while Shi Tianhao curled his lip. The group of people talked and laughed and came to the mysterious sky treasure tree. Xiao Zhener stopped and looked at Xiao Yan. "Brother Xiao Yan, I'll wait for you here." Xiao Yan opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Lin Feng's voice came to his ears. "It's okay to come in together." Xiao Zhener hesitated for a moment, but he didn't refuse and bowed. "Thank you, Senior." Junior is presumptuous. Everyone rose into the air and flew to the top of the treasure tree, entering the mysterious sky-time grotto heaven. In the cave, Lin Feng sat silently on a branch of a small treasure tree, smiling as he watched the group of direct disciples approach him. After everyone bowed to Lin Feng first looked at Shi Tianhao and said, "Tianhao, as you know, after the battle with the dual-pupiled person, your cultivation and mental state will attain perfection. At that time, it will be the time for you to overcome the lightning tribulation and form your yuanying. You can also try to go through the tribulation now, but it's not perfect enough. Even if you succeed, there will be some mistakes after you form your nascent soul. Shi Tianhao nodded. Yes, master, I understand. Lin Feng glanced at Wang Lin and said with a smile, Your third senior apprentice brother has pretty much paved the way for you. Whatever trump cards that dual-pupiled individual has, he's completely exposed them. Everyone laughed when they heard that, while Wang Lin shook his head with a wry smile. Your opponent obviously knows this too, so before he fights you in the dragon arena, he'll definitely put in more effort and prepare some new things. The Taishu Temple won't just sit by and watch either. Although his left dual pupil has been crippled, his strength will probably increase again before he fights you. When Lin Feng reached there, he extended a finger with his right hand and pointed at the space there gently. A cluster of violet qi surged out. The barrier of the heavens and the heaven-bearing seal in the violet qi worked together, suppressing a colossal vicious beast corp. The vicious beast was shaped like a yellow sac and scarlet like alchemic fire. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, but it was faceless. It was one of the 4 vicious beasts of the primordial era, chaos. Lin Feng said, You've comprehended the 4 symbols heaven-opening scripture and comprehended a new ability that belongs to you. Earlier, you've already refined the first chaotic hole with the essence blood of the Taotai, turning it into a black, abyssal land. Now, use this chaotic essence blood to refine your second chaotic hole. Shi Tianhao answered, Don't worry, master. Your disciple will definitely work hard. He practiced the 4 symbols heaven-opening scripture and opened 4 chaotic holes, but he did not necessarily need to refine the essence blood of the 4 vicious beasts of the primordial era. Any peak demonic bloodline would do. However, after careful consideration, he still decided to use the essence blood of chaos, Taotai, Qiongqi, and Taowu. The little Taotai, Tunten, had been much quieter during this period of time. She was nowhere to be seen on Jade Capital Mountain, not because her personality had changed, but because she had provided large quantities of essence blood for Shi Tianhao to refine his abilities. The little fellow was still recuperating in the desolate Heaven Valley right now. As she ate the large quantities of spiritual items Shi Tianhao had given her as payment, her eyes brimmed with tears. She just felt like she had lost out. At this moment, Lin Feng looked at Yang Qing and smiled. Little Qing Zi, the greatest barrier to your cultivation lies in your mental state. Apart from cultivating to attain immortality, you also have to see through the difficulties of life and death during core formation. The incident where you almost fell into the void battlefield is a form of experience for you, but it's not enough. Yang Qing bowed and accepted the lesson. Master is right. Disciple has been cultivating on the mountain recently, and I also have the same feeling. I always feel that I'm still missing one last thing from core formation. A look of shame appeared on his face. Disciple knows that it's the fear of death. At the juncture of life and death, disciple's mental state will fluctuate. Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, and the others all looked calm. No one laughed at Yang Qing. Even Xiao Zhener, who was meeting him for the first time, looked normal. There was great terror between life and death. How could it be easy to see through life and death? In fact, after a true core formation, as time passed and one's lifespan declined, it was inevitable that fear would reappear in the hearts of many cultivators. Except for a few people with great perseverance and determination, most people had to fight against the difficulties of life and death for the rest of their lives. Core formation was just the beginning. Lin Feng smiled. It's okay. Actually, you can try the method Nan Hua used to see through the difficulties of life and death. Yang Qing and the others were slightly surprised. Mr. Kong? Lin Feng nodded. Although Nan Hua is in seclusion right now and you can't find him directly, I can still give you some pointers. After listening to Lin Feng's introduction, Yang Qing muttered to himself, seal off all my cultivation and take the initiative to challenge the dangers of life and death like a mortal. Whether it was in terms of personality or life experience, Yang Qing actually felt some fear and insecurity in the depths of his heart. The path pointed out by Lin Feng, to a certain extent, also touched on the uneasiness in his heart. But after Yang Qing pondered for a while, his gaze became firm. Disciple understands. I definitely won't disappoint master. But Lin Feng shook his head, extending his hand and tapping Yang Qing's chest. Cultivation is for yourself, not for your master. Slowly, he said, this is actually a major obstacle on your path of cultivation. When you break through it, your cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Yang Qing looked a little startled. After a long time, he said softly, Disciple understands. And I understand. Then, you have to work hard to achieve it. Lin Feng looked at him and smiled slightly. Master believes you can do it. I just hope that day will not come too late. Yang Qing nodded his head forcefully. Xiao Yan, who was beside him, patted his shoulder. Yang Qing turned his head to look and saw Xiao Yan smiling. Think more about it. Just what is it that you really want? Once you think clearly, it is actually not hard. Yang Qing also smiled. At this time, Lin Feng looked at Yu Hongyan and asked with a smile, How did you feel fighting with that Jing Huan Marquis clone? Although he's a lecher, he's very strong. Yu Hongyan's red eyebrows rose slightly. A clone in the middle stage of the golden elixir. His martial arts cultivation is exquisite, and his martial artist's will is strong. Coupled with that golden halberd, Disciple had to use the Rising Sun's spear to defeat him. Just using the void-shattering divine spear cannot guarantee victory. Lin Feng smiled and asked, What if his clone's cultivation is at the late stage of the golden elixir? Yu Hongyan was not in a hurry to answer. After careful consideration, he answered, If he's at the late stage of the golden elixir, Disciple will have to use the second spear of the seamless killing technique. If I want to kill him, I'll probably have to use the third spear. Back then, Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao, who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes, nodded in agreement. Shi Tianhao looked at Yu Hongyan. Fourth senior sister, if I remember correctly, the last spear of your seamless killing technique's 3 divine spear stances has yet to be completely perfected? Yu Hongyan said, I can already use it, but the burden on my body is too great. Therefore, I still need to continue polishing and perfecting it. Saying this, the red-haired young lady smiled. However, I've gained a lot from this battle. After this battle, I'll be able to completely perfect the third spear after studying it for a period of time. Satisfied, Lin Feng nodded. Very good. With his cultivation, he could easily help Yu Hongyan perfect the entire set of remarkable martial arts. However, Lin Feng did not plan on doing so. He hoped that his disciples would be able to explore on their own and walk out a unique and complete path. It was not a problem for him to guide them forward, but Lin Feng did not plan on helping them along, with the exception of a few special circumstances. Your original weapon has been destroyed. This demonic dragon battle halberd is perfect for you to use as a new weapon. I've already wiped away all my personal imprints on it. You can just refine it yourself. Lin Feng opened up his palm, and with a flash of golden light, a great golden halberd landed before Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan's gaze flickered, as if recalling her shattered black flame battle halberd. That was the weapon her previous master, Zhang Lai, had bestowed upon her. In Yu Hongyan's pair of red eyes, her gaze quickly calmed down. Everything in the past disappeared like floating clouds. She solemnly received the golden demonic dragon battle halberd and bowed to Lin Feng. Disciple thanks master. Lin Feng then looked at Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen. He smiled and said, Xiao Yan, the magical powers you cultivate are too violent, and it will be difficult for you to form your nascent soul. At times like this, you need to calm your mind to nurture your magical powers and harmonize the power of the true fire. When the conditions are right, success will come naturally. But with Zhen accompanying you, I believe that your mind will not be too affected. Xiao Zhen was very generous and smiled. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, was a little embarrassed. He looked at Lin Feng embarrassedly. Master, why are you making fun of me too? You two have reunited after such a long time. I can't be more than happy for you. Lin Feng smiled and said, The ancient Emperor Blade will be temporarily under your control. Study it together with Zhen. The ancient Emperor's inheritance will be very beneficial for you to control the Nan Mingli fire. Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen bowed and agreed. After Lin Feng sent the other disciples away, he looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin was also smiling at him. All right, Xiao Lin, you can start now. Lin Feng smiled and said, You have been working hard in the void battlefield for a long time. Now is the time to reap the harvest. Wang Lin smiled and nodded. He immediately sat down cross-legged and silently channeled his magical powers. Black qi and white light appeared around him, alternating. Chapter 556. Wang Lin sat cross-legged and circulated the Taoist art of the Four Guardians' Heaven opening scripture. The golden elixir in his body spun continuously, and his mind faintly merged with the void. This was the sign of triggering the void lightning tribulation. Wang Lin, after returning from the void battlefield and cultivating the Four Guardians' Heaven opening scripture, was about to trigger the void lightning tribulation and break through to the Yuanying stage. Lin Feng looked at Wang Lin calmly. He had already learned from Wang Lin that due to the chaotic time in the void battlefield, he had already spent more than 100 years in the void battlefield. Although a considerable part of the 100 years was used to reconstruct his body and break through to the late stage of the golden elixir, his accumulation was already rich enough. Everything has its own destiny, Lin Feng thought. I originally thought that Wang Lin had a higher chance of forming his nascent soul first, but I thought that he would cultivate hard in the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven and wouldn't have any big obstacles in his heart. Completing his nascent soul would be a step faster. When he entered the void battlefield, he was seriously injured and his body was completely destroyed. It took a lot of time to reconstruct his body and heal his injuries, but he also encountered a space-time domain that was faster than the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven, so he closed the gap. Lin Feng smiled and put his hands behind his back. Back then, who would have thought that little Lin, who entered the void battlefield the last among the four and had difficulty in cultivating in the early stage, would be the first to form his nascent soul. However, forming a nascent soul is only one step in the long path of cultivation. It's hard to say who will be faster and who will be slower in the future. In the grotto heaven, Wang Lin circulated his Taoist art to the extreme. Without any warning, a large crack suddenly appeared in the void, and a thick twisting lightning bolt struck down toward his head. This was the case with the lightning tribulation. No matter where you hid, it would break through the void and directly appear in front of you. The cultivation of the group of personal disciples in the sect required Lin Feng's attention. It was mainly the golden elixir's 3 tribulations. For those below the golden elixir period and above the golden elixir period, no matter how difficult it was to cultivate, at least there was no danger to one's life. Apart from qi deviation, if one failed to advance, they would at most have to start all over again. If one failed to pass the 3 tribulations of the golden elixir period, one would really die. In the face of the void thunder tribulation, Wang Lin's body flashed with black gas and white light, resisting the heavenly thunder. The black qi constantly changed, forming the Yellow Springs death mirror. The gloomy Yellow Springs Road, the soundless river of forgetfulness, and the silent bridge of helplessness appeared one after another. Wave after wave of lightning clashed against each other. The black gas was annihilated once. As the white light flickered, life entered destruction, and from destruction to life, the power of nirvanic rebirth continued to resist the lightning. In the end, light and shadow floated above Wang Lin's head, and the new divine ability, life and death domain, was unleashed. The black and white gate opened, and the life and death domain directly devoured the tribulation lightning. In the life and death domain, countless living beings died, but countless dead beings were reborn. The cycle repeated, and the void thunder tribulation finally stopped, and Wang Lin also continued to understand more about the Tao of heaven and earth and the mysteries of space in the process. He cultivated the Tao technique taught by Lin Feng, and before he formed his Yuanying, he already knew some of the mysteries of space. At this moment, the harvest he gained was much greater than that of ordinary cultivators. Wang Lin's life and death domain was extremely condensed at this moment, like a real small world. The spatial structure was close to perfection, and it was much sturdier than before, and the concept of power was also much more mysterious. A clear light flickered above his head, and a golden elixir that flashed with purple light floated out. The golden elixir was full of cracks, but there was no aura of decay. Instead, it seemed to have been reborn. The golden elixir shone brightly, and in the light, a baby sat cross-legged. It looked exactly like Wang Lin when he was a child, and it was his Yuanying. This Yuanying's body was snow-white, and it emitted a faint luster, but there was a black aura around it. Congratulations to the host's direct disciple, Wang Lin, for advancing to the Yuanying stage. Lin Feng didn't pay much attention to the system notification. He carefully scanned Wang Lin's Yuanying with his divine sense, and felt a little regretful. He couldn't produce the divine light of creation. The conditions are too harsh, and I can't make even the slightest deviation. In this case, among all my disciples, only Tiny Tot has hope. Setting up the Supreme Spirit platform, condensing the Supreme Elixir cauldron, and forming a purple core to produce a vision. In the future, when he formed his nascent soul, he could innately produce the divine light of creation. Among the disciples under Lin Feng's tutelage, when the Wang Lin in front of them was forming his beer platform, a phenomenon appeared on the 9 levels of the beer platform. Even though it surpassed a normal grade 1 beer platform, in the end it could not be counted as a true sovereign beer platform. At this step, a deviation had already occurred. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing were both first-grade spirit platforms. Speaking of which, Yang Qing was even more regretful. Immediately, the entire Yujing mountain could feel it. At the first instant, 4 lumps of bright flames lit up on burning heaven cliff. Xiao Yan's loud laughter came from within the flames. Congratulations, third junior brother, for going first. But don't be complacent, I'll be there very soon. Thunder roared in the desolate sky valley. Shi Tianhao also smiled and said, Congratulations, third senior brother. After my battle with Shi Tianyi, I'll chase after you. Yang Qing and Yu Hongyan's voices also sounded in the Nirvana Time Cave and Snow Wind Valley at the same time. Congratulations, third senior brother. The group of young disciples on Yujing Mountain was puzzled at first. When they understood, they all clicked their tongues. I didn't expect that Elder Wang, who usually doesn't show himself, would be the first to form his nascent soul. A crack appeared beside Lin Feng and Wang Lin. An extremely handsome young man dressed in a purple robe with golden edges stepped out. He looked at Wang Lin from head to toe and praised, You formed your nascent soul so quickly. It's rare, it's rare. I admire you, admire you. The person who came was Miao Shihao. When Wang Lin saw him, he cupped his fists and bowed. Mr. Miao, you're too kind. You're too kind, you're too kind. Brother Shihao, I've always only told the truth. Miao Shihao covered his mouth and laughed. He glanced at Lin Feng and sighed in admiration. As expected, sect master has good taste. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Shihao, help me spread the news to the world. My direct disciple has formed his nascent soul. This is a joyous occasion. Yuanying cultivators were rare. They could be called perfected lords or grand ancestors. In small and medium-sized cultivation sects, they were already the masters of the sects and the patriarchs. Even in large sects, if a descendant with outstanding potential and a bright future succeeded in forming his or her nascent soul, it was indeed a joyous occasion worthy of celebration. Those with extravagance would invite friends and close forces to celebrate together. With Lin Feng's current status, how could he do things quietly and carelessly? On that day, Xianmen Tianzong of Kunlun Mountain in the Divine Land sent out news to the world. Wang Lin, the third disciple of the master of Xianmen Gate, had formed his yuanying soul. Chapter 557. Ever since the destruction of the Wind God sect a year ago and the suppression of the Golden Crow Great Sage, the entire Kunlun Mountain in the Divine Land officially became the sphere of influence of Xianmen Tianzong. The Battle of Kunlun Mountain was also the first time that Xianmen Tianzong's name spread throughout the entire Divine Land. Since then, the things that happened in the cloudy forest world were relatively secretive and not many people knew about it. However, the fight for the Kuanping's secret treasure in the Arctic Ice Sea and the Tianjia Peak sword trials made the reputation of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong more and more resounding. Later on, when the Yu family was wiped out, Lin Feng withstood the pressure from Taishu Temple and supported Shi Tianhao to make a duel with Shi Tianyi. It made Xianmen Tianzong's reputation gradually reach the height of the midday sun in the human cultivation world. According to the normal time of the vast thousand world, in the past year, the celestial sect of Xianmen was the most dazzling existence. Many major events in the vast land of the Divine Land were basically related to the celestial sect of Xianmen, and even centered on the celestial sect of Xianmen. Not long ago, there was even more news coming out from the void battlefield. Previously, the universally recognized number one genius of the young generation of the human race, the disciple of Taishu Temple, born with dual pupils like a deity descending to the mortal world, and even achieved the supreme Tao foundation, Shi Tianyi, was actually blinded by Wang Lin, the third disciple of the master of Xianmen in the void battlefield. This explosive news almost spread all over the world in the blink of an eye. No one would have thought that before Shi Tianyi fought with Shi Tianhao, he would first be blinded by one of Shi Tianhao's senior brothers. Moreover, it was a fair duel, there was no sneak attack, there was no room for quibbling. With yuanying early-stage cultivation, he was defeated by a golden elixir late-stage opponent in a duel. Once the news came out, the whole world was in an uproar. Those who heard it all sought to verify it, but Taishu Temple remained silent, so everyone was even more shocked. Dual pupil Shi Tianyi was defeated just like that? Connecting this to the previous high-profile performance of Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi, people couldn't help but have the illusion that any one of Lin Feng's disciples could defeat Shi Tianyi. For a moment there was a lot of discussion, and everyone was even more in awe of Xianmen Tianzong. Shi Tianyi's fame had risen because of his dual pupils, and at this moment, because his dual pupils had been damaged, it had caused an uproar among the crowd. It was to the extent that the true situation of the battle being a lose-lose situation had been intentionally or unintentionally overlooked by the crowd. Of Shi Tianyi, and the battle that he was actually lost was actually caused by people. Everyone had intentionally or unintentionally. Everyone wanted to see whether or not Shi Tianyi could live up to his reputation. They also wanted to see how he, who had lost one pupil, was going to fight against Shi Tianhao. They wanted to see if Xianmen Tianzong was really so domineering, that any one of Lin Feng's direct disciples could be so amazing. Naturally, there were also people who privately criticized that Xianmen Tianzong had done something shameful and harbored evil intentions. He used Wang Lin's strength to destroy Shi Tianyi's strength, and used the wheel battle to exhaust Shi Tianyi. This was equivalent to letting Shi Tianyi fight with Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao for a month. If that was the case, could it be that Xianmen Tianzong actually didn't have enough confidence in Shi Tianhao, and that was why he used such dishonorable methods? under the guidance of some people's seemingly unintentional path, similar speculations also became rampant. At this moment, news came from Kunlun Mountain. One of the protagonists of the incident was the person who had just blinded Shi Tianyi's double pupil. Wang Lin, the third disciple of the master of the celestial sect of wonders, had successfully passed the void thunder tribulation from the late stage of the golden elixir and formed Yuanying. When this news fell into the ears of those who were interested, they were immediately shocked. This was because less than a year ago, Wang Lin had just formed his gold core. Moreover, it was a three-step jump. Within a few months, he had rushed from the early stage of the foundation establishment stage to the early stage of the golden elixir. Now that he had successfully formed his nascent soul, such a speed of ascension, even if he had been painstakingly cultivating in the heavenly abode where time was accelerated, such a speed could be said to be sensational. Considering his battle record in the late stage of the golden elixir against Shi Tianyi in the early stage of the Yuanying, it could be seen that his actual combat level was also extremely sharp and could not be underestimated. An ordinary cultivator's nascent soul could be ignored, but the significance of Wang Lin's nascent soul was obviously different. After the Purple Sky Path, the Northern Militant Royal Court, the Heavenly Sword Sect, and the Sun-Moon Sword Sect, which had always had a friendly relationship with Xianmen Tianzong, received the news. They all sent people to congratulate him. Even the Celeritas Sword Sect, which everyone had the impression that Xianmen Tianzong didn't really get along with, also sent a congratulatory gift. During the Tianjia Peak Sword Meet, the Constellation Sword Sect, the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, and the other sects, who had their face preserved because of Lin Feng, also sent congratulatory gifts to the Kunlun mountain range from thousands of miles away. When this scene fell into the eyes of the onlookers, they couldn't help but sigh. At the same time that Xianmen Tianzong's reputation was soaring, his foundation was also becoming more and more solid, and he was more and more recognized and respected by the various sects and powers in the human cultivation world. The southern wasteland, even further south of the great swamp of the ancient domain, was a forest area. It was primitive and dense, as if it had not been developed. Deep within the forest, there was an incomparably vast deep pit, like a huge dried-up lake. The bottom of the deep pit continuously went down, and it was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. It was like a pavilion, and layer after layer of giant formations emitted light. This was the base of the Hell Path of the Reincarnation Sect, one of the 6 paths of the Reincarnation Sect. In the southern wasteland, the Reincarnation Sect was fully deserving of being the super overlord. If it wasn't for the internal strife, the Reincarnation Sect would have been a headache for all the sects and powers outside of the southern wasteland. The Great Zhou dynasty, which was on the other side of the great swamp of the ancient domain, would have even more trouble sleeping and eating because of this. But because of the internal strife, the Reincarnation Sect was unable to expand outwards, and could only defend the southern wasteland. In the long years, the 6 paths of reincarnation rose and fell, and no one was able to completely suppress the others, and in the end, unify the Reincarnation Sect. In the depths of the Hell Path of the mountain, a skinny middle-aged man stood there silently. His cheekbones were rather high and his skin was bronze. He didn't have the lifeless aura of a normal Hell Path cultivator. This person was the Hell Dao sovereign, Lu Jikuan. But at this moment, the smile on his face had already disappeared, and his expression was calm. "Martial uncle, are you sure you want to use that Xianmen Tianzong as external help? I think that the master of the Taoist sect is not easy to deal with, and I'm afraid that in the end, it will be disadvantageous to the Reincarnation Sect as a whole," Lu Jikuan said silently. An old voice sounded in the darkness. "We're not using him as external help, but rather, we don't want to waste our past relationships, and we don't want to put an end to the possibility of the other 5 paths roping in this Xianmen Tianzong." The owner of this old voice was naturally the actual leader of the Hell Path, and also the person with the highest cultivation, Dark Lord. In the past, someone from the Yang family, one of the 7 great families of the ancient Yuan-Tian world, which was supported by the Hell Path, had caused trouble in the Kunlun Mountain. He had offended Lin Feng, and was captured by Lin Feng. Lu Jikuan was forced to use the treasure, the Death Energy Stone, to exchange for his release. Although he wasn't willing, the overall atmosphere between the two sides was quite harmonious. After the incident, as Xianmen Tianzong became more and more powerful, and as Lin Feng himself displayed more and more strength, Lu Jikuan completely gave up on the idea of regaining his dignity. Now, he had other ideas. He felt that Xianmen Tianzong might become the external help for the Hell Path to become the top in the reincarnation sect. After listening to Dark Lord's words, Lu Jikuan nodded. I understand. His disciple has reached the nascent soul realm, and he has announced it to the world. We should also send a congratulatory gift. That's right. Not only that, you might as well go and watch the battle between his disciple, Shi Tianhao, and the person with double pupils. After saying this, Dark Lord's voice became low. Lu Jikuan replied, I understand. Please rest assured, Martial Uncle. At the barren peak in the southern foothills of the Great Transverse Mountain, one of the members of the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance, the base of the Wilderness Sword sect. In the main hall of the sect, a middle-aged man in a yellow robe was sitting on the main seat. He looked calm, and a strong wave of power was emitted. He was the current sect master of the Wilderness Sword sect, Sword Master of the Wilderness. Below him sat a few people, all of whom had powerful Dharma power. They were all at the yuanying stage, but their expressions were not calm at the moment. One of them, an old man with white hair and a high crown and ancient clothes, looked a little gloomy. Huanglei, do you know what to do? Sword Master of the Wilderness said slowly. The old man looked even gloomier. Sect Master, they took my 9 smelting heavenly thunder net of desolation first. Sword Master of the Wilderness looked at him calmly. How can you be sure that it was Xianmen Tianzong who took it, and they didn't get it by accident? The Master of the Celestial Gate of Wonders did appear at the Eternal Spring Peak at that time, but how can you be sure that he killed Chu Bin and took your ritual implement? Have you ever thought that with the cultivation of the Master of the Celestial Gate of Wonders, you would have died at that time if it was really him who fought with you from a distance? Even if you were in the barren peak, he might not be able to protect you. Ancestor Huanglei was stunned. At that time, he really didn't know who killed and took the treasure. He wanted to refine the celestial device so that he could descend, but he was also stopped. Sword Master of the Wilderness looked at him deeply. The sect will not hold you accountable for the Renyuan Jindan. This time, the disciple of the Master of the Celestial Sect has reached the nascent soul realm. You will go to congratulate him. Do you understand? Hearing the words, Renyuan Jindan, Ancestor Huanglei suddenly looked like a frosted eggplant. Years ago, he secretly colluded with the 100 Herbs ancestor to refine the Renyuan Jindan, and the 100 Herbs ancestor covered it up so that he could profit from it, which was a big taboo in the sect. Now, he was offering a yuanying celestial device to befriend Xianmen Tianzong, which was just to atone for his crime. What's more, he was not sure that the celestial device was taken by Xianmen Tianzong. Even if it was true, he couldn't ask for it now. Not to mention asking Lin Feng for it, even Zhu Yi was not a match for him, a middle-stage yuanying cultivator. After a long time, Ancestor Huanglei gradually calmed down. He sighed and cupped his hands at Sword Master of the Wilderness. I understand. Please rest assured, Sect Master. I will definitely do my job well. When the news came out, it shocked the world. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng acted as if nothing had happened. However, Miao Shihao thought about it and secretly asked Lin Feng, Zhu Yi is now making final preparations for the exam. Will it affect him? Now that Wang Lin, who had always lagged behind him, had taken the first step, Zhu Yi would not be jealous. Instead, like Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao, he would be motivated to improve. However, he was now at the critical moment of the imperial examination. If his mood fluctuated, the impact would be unpredictable. Lin Feng said lightly, "It doesn't matter. I have confidence in Xiaoyi. Passing the news to him will only make him perform better." Miao Shihao nodded and suddenly laughed. "Sect Master, you are always so confident. But you really have a good eye." Lin Feng frowned slightly. "Nothing else, but I feel that I have forgotten something." "Is it important?" Miao Shihao asked curiously. Lin Feng thought for a moment. "It's not very important. It's just that I remember Tong Er." Chapter 558. Reuniting with Xiao Zhen'er, Xiao Yan was undoubtedly very happy. The pair of children didn't need to do anything, they just sat facing each other and looked at each other, and they felt happy. However, amidst this joy, Xiao Yan felt that he seemed to have forgotten something, which made him faintly uneasy. "What is it?" Xiao Yan smacked his lips, and suddenly, a figure appeared in his mind. "I remember Tong Er." Little Lin Tong lived on his burning heaven cliff, and because of the change in the spirit energy in her body, she fell into a temporary sleep, like a cultivator in seclusion. Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen are reunited after a long time, so he forgot about this matter. Thinking about this, cold sweat poured down Xiao Yan's back. Xiao Zhen looked at him strangely, feeling puzzled. "Zhen sit for a moment, I'll go to the alchemy room and get you some of the medicinal pills I refined." Xiao Yan laughed dryly and stood up. Just as he was about to step out, a flame shot out from the cave entrance. The firelight pounced straight at Xiao Yan's chest, and then turned into a snow-white adorable little girl with 2 goat horn braids, hanging on Xiao Yan's neck like a koala. Her little mouth moved close to Xiao Yan's cheek and kissed him. "Tong Er just woke up, and I can already feel Daddy so good." The little girl giggled. It was Lin Tong. She laughed happily and didn't notice that right now Xiao Yan was completely petrified. He looked at little Lin Tong in his embrace and couldn't help but not know whether to laugh or cry. Stiffening his neck, he turned his head to look behind and saw Xiao Zhen looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Zhen, listen to me." Xiao Yan stuttered. This is Tong Er, my goddaughter, she really is my goddaughter." He hurriedly said to Lin Tong, "How many times have I told you, it's godfather, not daddy?" The little girl hung on his neck, twisted her little body in his arms, and pouted with a wronged expression. This expression, in the eyes of outsiders, could easily cause misunderstanding. Xiao Zhen giggled and asked, "Does he have a godmother?" She was elegant and beautiful to begin with. Her smile was like a blossoming flower. Even little Lin Tong was slightly dazed. Xiao Yan blurted out, "Yes, isn't it you?" "Xiao Yan Gidge." Xiao Zhen said a little angrily, lightly hitting him. Being teased by other people, she could still take it calmly, but coming from Xiao Yan's mouth, the young girl couldn't take it. By now, Xiao Yan had regained his composure. Seeing that Xiao Zhen wasn't angry, his mind started to work again. He smiled at Xiao Zhen and said, "Her real name is Lin Tong, but she calls Master Grandpa." Xiao Zhen was slightly stunned. Xiao Yan hurriedly explained Lin Tong's background to her, even telling her about how they went to the parasol tree forest in Infinite Wilderness. This is truly a wondrous form of fate. Xiao Zhen also shook her head and praised, "I knew she was a monster from the beginning, but I didn't expect there to be so many twists and turns. I didn't expect this little girl to have such a powerful background." Xiao Yan sighed and said, "To be honest, I didn't expect this either. But..." Xiao Zhen's eyes flickered, and she chuckled and said, "This little girl calls Senior Lin Grandpa, and calls you godfather, doesn't that mean Lin Feng was known to be protective of his children?" There were many rumors about Xiao Yan and the others being his godsons, and most of them were derogatory. Xiao Yan couldn't help but laugh and shook his head. It's easy to misunderstand if outsiders hear it, but actually. His eyes were deep and nostalgic. Although he was in the cave abode, he was looking at the top of Jade Capital Mountain. You know, my father passed away when I was young, and then I met Master. After many years of teaching and learning, I don't know about other junior brothers, but sometimes I really have a feeling. Xiao Zhener came to his side and held his hand. Xiao Yan turned around, and the two looked at each other and smiled. Xiao Yan smiled and said, "Grandpa is now living in Sand Continent City. It's rare for you to come back to Divine Land. Let's go visit him tomorrow." Okay. Xiao Zhener was cold and quiet in front of others, but in front of Xiao Yan, she was gentle and considerate. Plus, she spent her childhood in Wuzhou Xiao family, and the old man of Xiao family also took care of her a lot. This time she returned to Divine Land. She planned to visit the old man. Lin Tong curled up in Xiao Yan's arms, sucking on a white and fat finger. Her other hand pulled on Xiao Yan's clothes. "Daddy, she's so pretty. Who is she?" Hearing this, Xiao Yan didn't bother to correct her. He looked at Xiao Zhener with a smile and said sneakily, "She can be your godmother, okay?" Lin Tong blinked her big eyes, and after thinking seriously for a moment, she said in a childish voice, "Okay." Xiao Zhener glared at Xiao Yan. "How old are you already, still acting like a child?" Although she was a bit shy, little Lin Tong was very likable, obedient and cute. Xiao Zhener also quite liked her. It's just that she and Xiao Yan exchanged a glance, both of them having a preposterous feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. They were still a pair of virgin boys and girls, but they were already parents. On top of Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng looked at them and smiled. In the following days, Lin Feng focused on teaching the cultivation of his disciples. Until one day, he suddenly sensed something. The Dharma body that was with Zhu Yi found that Zhu Yi was about to start his Yuanying thunder tribulation. Lin Feng counted the days in his mind. Xiaoyi finished the imperial examinations. His Dharma body usually hid in the depths of Zhu Yi's soul. It wouldn't easily interfere with Zhu Yi's actions, and it wouldn't sense things in the outside world. But this was just an intentional seal. In reality, Lin Feng was in a mysterious state of being half awake, and everything around him was like fine sand. His Dharma body thought for a moment, and Lin Feng already knew what happened. He couldn't help but smile. "Good boy, well done." In this year's imperial examination of the Great Zhou dynasty, Zhu Yi won first place and became the Zhuangyuan. Not only did he win first place, but Zhu Yi also completed his magnificent chapter and wrote it on the examination paper. It was praised by hundreds of sages and was known as the Chapter of Sages. Zhu Yi's examination paper caused the statues in the tribute courtyard to shake, and the ancient and modern literary aura resonated together. This shocked the entire Tianjing city, and Zhu Yi's reputation rose in an instant. His literary reputation surpassed the great scholars of the past, and he was as famous as the sages of the ancient literary world. Such a grand event in the literary world shocked not only the mortal world, but also the cultivation world. Everyone knew that Zhu Yi was a cultivator, but being a cultivator didn't mean that he could write great essays. All paths lead to the sky, and although they all lead to the same destination, the scenery on the road was different. The statues in the tribute courtyard had endured countless years and were worshipped by generations of scholars. They were already mysterious, connected to the right path of heaven and earth, and faintly in harmony with heaven. To be able to make 100 sages resonate together, it meant that not only did Zhu Yi have a literary aura, but he had also cultivated his own Tao and walked his own path. He knew everything, and he had a deep understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth. Not long after triggering the 100 sages resonate together, the essence of Zhu Yi's Tao merged into one furnace. After accumulating to the peak, he was about to face the thunder tribulation. Just as Lin Feng expected, The news of Wang Lin's successful nascent soul formation didn't have any negative impact on Zhu Yi. Instead, it made his Tao heart more clear, and his understanding of Tao and literature became more thorough. If it wasn't for Wang Lin, Zhu Yi could still complete his chapter of sages and trigger the 100 sages resonate together, but he might not be able to reach the level of facing the thunder tribulation immediately after the examination. The Emperor of the Immeasurable Ocean revealed himself and stood upright beside Zhu Yi, so that no one dared to intrude. Lin Feng could clearly sense that there were people spying on them in the surroundings, but when they saw the Emperor of the Immeasurable Ocean, they all retreated. Under his personal protection, Zhu Yi successfully passed the thunder tribulation and formed the Yuanying, becoming the second disciple to form his nascent soul. Congratulations to the host's direct disciple, Zhu Yi, for advancing to the Yuanying stage. When the lightning dissipated, a small baby floated above Zhu Yi's head, exactly the same as when he was swaddled. After forming the Yuanying, Zhu Yi gradually shed the characteristics of the golden elixir of light and darkness, and turned into the 8 trigrams to protect him. On the surface of the Yuanying, the words of the chapter of sages faintly appeared. Slowly, the Yuanying returned to his body. Zhu Yi opened his eyes and looked at the Emperor of the Immeasurable Ocean in front of him. He bowed and greeted, "Master." The facial features of the Emperor of the Immeasurable Ocean's Dharmakaya were exactly the same as Lin Feng's. Now Lin Feng also projected his own spiritual will over, smiling and nodding. "Little E, congratulations on advancing further and forming the Yuanying." Among his disciples, Zhu Yi's cultivation was the most stable. He seemed to be very low-key, but in fact, he was well prepared. For him, there were almost no major bottlenecks. He did not rush, nor did he stop moving forward. He just took one step at a time, walking steadily and steadily, unstoppable. A smile appeared on Zhu Yi's face. "After the examination and meeting the Emperor of Zhou, my mother can be conferred the title of ruler. At that time, there will be official appointments. I have already decided not to do it. After my mother is conferred the title of ruler, I will immediately leave for the Great Qin's capital, West Hill City. I will definitely be there for the battle between little junior brother and the person with the double pupils. I will personally witness little junior brother seeking justice for himself." Lin Feng laughed. "Tian Hao will be very happy that you have such intentions." After laughing, he looked at Zhu Yi and asked, "However, there seemed to be some twists and turns during the examination?" Zhu Yi nodded and answered, "That's right. At that time, in the tribute courtyard, someone had already triggered the resonance of the ranking of sages and sages. However, just as there was a movement, I finished my essay and was just a little faster than him. In the end, it was my essay that triggered the resonance of 100 sages and suppressed his scholarly spirit." The tribute courtyard was a gathering of heroes. There were many people with scholarly spirit that even triggered strange phenomena. In the imperial examination of the Great Qin dynasty, Jiao Junchen triggered auspicious clouds to cover his head. His essay was beautiful and his talent was soaring. The strange phenomena that he triggered were the most beautiful. He was the best among the heroes and finally won first place. However, the soaring scholarly spirit that formed strange phenomena could not trigger the resonance of 100 sages. According to what Zhu Yi said, there was someone else besides him who had this kind of momentum. This was very rare. Moreover, I feel that this person has evil intentions. Zhu Yi frowned slightly and analyzed. After I finished my essay, that person's scholarly spirit immediately dimmed. However, it was not because of me. It was as if he gave up on his own accord. As a result, I could not find out who that person was. From this, it can be seen that he might have come to obstruct my luck. He wanted to affect my momentum and spirit. In the end, after he failed, he cut off his tail like a lizard and did not reveal his identity. Chapter 559. After listening to Zhu Yi's words, Lin Feng's eyes flickered and he said, "To be able to resonate with the saints of the literary world like you is absolutely rare. There are only a handful of them in the world." Zhu Yi nodded. Jiao Junshen's knowledge is not bad. Although I did not have much interaction with him, I am sure that he inherited the orthodoxy of the ancient Confucian school and is truly talented. However, even when he was the top scholar of the Qin dynasty in the imperial examination, he did not resonate with the 100 saints. There are too few people who can do this. I have thought about it. Although I have no proof, I feel that there is one person who might be able to do it. Lin Feng smiled, saying a person's name. Zhu Yi also smiled, nodding his head. If it's a great reclusive scholar coming out of seclusion, he wouldn't purposely target this disciple. And among the famous people, this disciple can only think of him. It's okay. In the end, you are still better than him. Lin Feng said lightly, there will be a day to settle the score. He lowered his head and looked at Zhu Yi. In the following days, you should take good care of your yuanying and consolidate your state. Lin Feng suddenly laughed. Xiaoyi, your own fortune is as high as the heavens, but what master should give you, I will also not be lacking. Zhu Yi smiled. Senior in the holy ancient robe and I have studied and learned from each other. That is why we are traveling together. He usually wore the purple robe of Xianmen Tianzong. At this moment, he wore a white robe on top of the purple robe. It was simple and elegant. At this moment, the surface of the white robe emitted a white light. An elegant fragrance wafted out, as if a scholar was lighting a lamp to read at night. The sound of reading came from the white light. At first, it was inconspicuous, but soon it became a great momentum. It was as if all the scholars in the world were reading manuscripts at the same time. The spirit and will of the scholars in the world merged together. It was like the righteous path of heaven and earth, shocking the ages. In the white light, the silhouette of an old man with a long beard and a gentle temperament appeared. When he saw Lin Feng's infinite ocean emperor's Dharmakaya, he cupped his hands. Lin Feng smiled. Before Zhu Yi underwent his tribulation, Zhu Yi had already reported this matter to him, as soon as they met. This second disciple of his had caused 100 sages to cry out in unison, obtaining the title of Zhuangyuan, and even gaining the title of secondary saint of the literary world. Not only had he alarmed the ranking statues of the various sages of the literary world, he had also alarmed a magical treasure that could suppress the entire great Zhou dynasty's culture and talent. Ancient Saint Robe. The long robe worn by the holy master of the ancient literary world was impressively a transformation-level magic weapon. The principles and concepts of this magic treasure were rather unique. In the hands of other cultivators, it would not be able to display the slightest bit of effect and would be like an ordinary cloth robe. Only in the hands of people who had redeeming qualities in terms of literature and cultivation could it display its dazzling brilliance. In the past, Zhu Yi's father, Zhu Hongwu, the Marquis of Xuanji, switched from martial arts to literature. After leaving the battlefield, he studied and became a Confucian scholar of his generation. In the end, he helped Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou to take control of the court and was given the title of Grand Tutor. Zhu Hongwu was once the person in the great Zhou dynasty who was most likely to activate the ancient saint robe. However, in the end, he failed and could only give up. The ancient saint robe was enshrined in the tribute courtyard as usual. It was still like an ordinary cloth robe. No one would have thought that a few decades later, a shocking article written by Zhu Yi would cause 100 sages to cry out in unison. Although his cultivation was only at the later stage of the golden elixir at that time, he had touched the ancient saint robe and could actually control this magic treasure. This matter caused a great uproar in the great Zhou dynasty. There were many controversies, but in the end Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou stood his ground and settled the matter. He allowed Zhu Yi to leave the tribute courtyard with the ancient saint robe and travel around the world. Zhu Yi said, Master, disciple has a promise with the ancient Saint Robe Senior. In the future, we will travel around the world together and teach the people of the world. This is your fate. You should grasp it. Lin Feng smiled and said, I am also happy that you have such a great ambition. Zhu Yi bowed to Lin Feng. The artifact spirit of the ancient Saint Robe also bowed. I have said that no matter which of you succeeds in forming your nascent soul, I will give you a magic treasure. Lin Feng said, This is the magic treasure I will give you. Together with the ancient Saint Robe, you can go anywhere in the world with 2 treasures in your hand. On the Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng's main body waved his hand. Purple chi broke through the layers of void and a black light flew across the sky. After a while, it arrived in front of Zhu Yi. It was a black stone tablet with the words, Eternal Night, written on it. It emitted a power that could suppress all things and make everything in the world fall into a deep sleep. It was the primordial spirit magic treasure, the Eternal Night Devil Tablet. This magic treasure was not refined by Lin Feng himself, but seized from the hands of someone else. However, its foundation is thick and extraordinary. It is a treasure that came from the super sect of the demonic path, the Night Demon sect. Its strength is extraordinary, and at the same time it is also the only incarnation-level magic treasure that Lin Feng currently has on hand. Although this treasure was incarnation grade, Lin Feng had refined it after forming his primordial spirit. The Eternal Night Devil Tablet's primordial spirit was in a deep sleep all year round. It was indifferent and adaptable to circumstances. It wasn't as fierce as normal magic treasures of the demonic path. After witnessing Lin Feng's strength, as well as Lin Feng's promise to help it reach a higher level, the Eternal Night Devil Steel very happily expressed its submission. Now, it was transferred by Lin Feng to Zhu Yi, who had just formed his nascent soul. As the black light on the Eternal Night Devil Tablet flickered, a black-robed middle-aged man appeared and sized up Zhu Yi expressionlessly. Zhu Yi's gaze also landed on the Eternal Night Devil Tablet and sized up the other party. The primordial spirit of the Supreme Saint Robe beside him also turned its gaze over. After the 2 incarnation-grade magic treasures' primordial spirits looked at each other, their gazes diverted. The Eternal Night Devil Tablet's primordial spirit said, This kid has comprehended the Tao art and is quite talented. He also has the protection of a master like the Celestial Gates Master. His future is limitless. More importantly, he has great fortune and amazing luck. According to the Celestial Gates Master, he has obtained the recognition of an incarnation-grade magic treasure before forming his nascent soul. This kind of fortune can be said to be heaven-defying. The Eternal Night Devil Tablet did not have a stubborn personality. It did not object and was willing to be refined by Zhu Yi. Lin Feng looked at this scene and nodded with a smile. The Supreme Saint Robe is trash in other people's hands, but in Zhu Yi's hands, it can display great power. Adding on the Eternal Night Devil Tablet, 2 incarnation-grade magic treasures, even if it does not reach the peak of its power, it is still extremely impressive. Lin Feng's Boundless Ocean Emperor's avatar returned to the space between Zhu Yi's eyebrows. Zhu Yi's expression was calm as he looked in the direction of Tianjing City. He could faintly feel that after the Boundless Ocean Emperor disappeared, there were a few gazes looking at him. One of them was filled with majesty. He could not be more familiar with it. It was the gaze that he feared the most when he was young. The gaze of the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Hongwu. Zhu Yi slowly let out a breath and closed his eyes. He no longer cared about the movements of the outside world and meditated to nourish his yuanying. In Tianjing City, the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Hongwu retracted his gaze. He sat on a large throne, and on the dragon throne in front of him sat Emperor Zhou's Liang Pan. Liang Pan also retracted his gaze at this time and looked towards Zhu Hongwu. Slowly he said, "The second one." Zhu Hongwu nodded his head. "Yes, Your Majesty." After Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others displayed their monstrous potential. It was publicly acknowledged that when they rise up one by one and fill the gap in the middle and high level of power in Xianmen Tianzong will completely establish its own great power, and it will not be easily shaken. At that time, the view was that the standard for rising up was to form their nascent soul. Once Xiao Yan and the others formally form their nascent soul, it will announce that they have officially stepped onto the stage of the divine land. With the potential and strength they displayed, during the Yuanying stage, they will become a power that cannot be ignored. In the blink of an eye, this moment has already arrived. 4 people at Liang Pan's and Zhu Hongwu's level, Yuanying stage cultivators, are still not worth their attention. But the problem they must face is that after Zhu Yi and the others form their nascent soul, they can practically run amok below the primordial spirit stage. After all, those who can form primordial spirit are very few. Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu themselves can ignore it, the primordial spirit cultivators that the great Zhou dynasty commands can ignore it, but the others must be concerned. Especially when, in the foreseeable future, Zhu Yi and the others will definitely advance towards an even higher level very quickly. Right now it actually doesn't matter, Zhu Hongwu said silently. The worst situation has yet to appear. After all, Yujing Mountain is not a magic treasure. It's just that we can't be sure if the master of the Taoist sect of wonders has any hidden methods, Liang Pan said. Regardless of whether he has or not, as long as we make preparations on our side it will be enough. Right now, Xianmen Tianzong is very likely to clash with Taishu Temple. Our great Zhou can just wait and see. The reason I allowed Zhu Yi to take away the ancient saint robe is precisely because of this. Zhu Hongwu respectfully said, Your Majesty is wise. After Wang Lin, the news of Zhu Yi forming his nascent soul also spread throughout the world. Moreover, he successfully formed his nascent soul in one fell swoop after triggering the voices of hundreds of saints in the imperial examination and obtaining the favor of the incarnation-level magic treasure, the ancient saint robe. For ordinary cultivators to form their nascent soul is one thing, but the potential and strength that Wang Lin and Zhu Yi and the others have shown, even primordial spirit cultivators would have to raise their eyebrows. Lin Feng's 2 disciples had successively advanced to the Yuanying stage in a short period of time, each more powerful than the other. The overall momentum was like a wave, surging wave after wave, which imperceptibly increased the attention of the upcoming battle between the 2 sure brothers of the ancient sky dragon domain. As a result, Xianmen Tianzong and Shi Tianhao's momentum was also rising. Even though Shi Tianyi had the support of Taishu Temple, he still showed some signs of decline. Born with double pupils, a supreme Tao foundation, formed his nascent soul before the age of 17, a direct disciple of Taishu Temple, and countless halos, Shi Tianyi, at this moment, compared to his younger brother, began to go downhill. Xianmen Tianzong's momentum and prestige were growing. After Zhu Yi took the nascent soul examination, Lin Feng checked the reputation value in the system, and found that the overall reputation of the sect was infinitely close to the goal, and only a few remote places were still a little short. He believed that after the battle between the 2 sure brothers of the ancient sky dragon domain, as long as Shi Tianhao could win, this last step could be made up for. At this moment, in a cave residence on White Cloud Mountain, a tall youngster was silently adjusting his breathing with his eyes closed, nourishing his magical power. This tall youngster was Shi Tianyi, the one who would soon fight against the tiny Shi Tianhao. After returning from the battlefield of the void, he had been cultivating in seclusion, and only recently broke out of seclusion to recuperate. A white cloud emerged in front of him, condensing into the figure of a woman. It was Tao Master Yunzhan. Shi Tianyi opened his eyes, got up and bowed, Martial Aunt Yunzhan. His left eye, which was previously blinded by Wang Lin, had now been healed, and there was no trace of injury. It was just that the original terrifying double pupils had returned to ordinary, just like an ordinary person, with only one pupil. The mysterious power that could see through the illusion and restore the truth no longer existed. Even the Taishu temple could only heal external injuries and restore his eyesight, so that he would not become a one-eyed man. However, the power of the double pupils could not be restored. At this moment, Shi Tianyi had regained his usual calmness, not because he did not care about the loss of his left eye, but because he had obtained more power, which allowed him to erase the previous shadow. Chapter 560. Tao Master Cloudzen looked at Shi Tianyi and sighed inwardly. To be honest, Shi Tianyi's calamity had something to do with her. The reason she entered the void battlefield was to escort Shi Tianyi. However, no one had expected that Wang Lin would be so fierce, and Lin Feng was here as well. "Follow me," Tao Master Cloudzen said and led the way out of the cave abode. Shi Tianyi followed behind her calmly. Both of them walked on White Cloud Mountain. The mountain path was shrouded in clouds, and they could only see a radius of less than 10 meters. They could not see anything further. Shi Tianyi did not look sideways. From the first day he arrived at White Cloud Mountain, he already had some understanding of this. Back then, he had even used his left eye to investigate, but he found that he could not see through it at all. It was not that the power of his left eye was too weak, but rather that his cultivation level was too low. At the thought of this, Shi Tianyi's left eye flickered, and he felt a dull pain in his pupil again. His eyelids drooped slightly as he calmed his mind and followed behind Tao Master Cloudzen. As they walked, Tao Master Cloudzen suddenly came to a stop. Shi Tianyi stopped behind her and looked forward. He saw a man in green slowly walking out of the cloud. The man was not old, looking about 20 to 30 years old. He looked calm. He had an ordinary body, appearance, and temperament. No matter how one looked at him, he was just an ordinary person. He stopped in front of Tao Master Cloudzen, bowed and said, "Uncle Master Cloudzen." Then, he looked at Shi Tianyi, who was behind Tao Master Cloudzen, and nodded slightly. "Junior brother Shi." His voice was also very ordinary, very ordinary. It was not hoarse and deep, not loud and clear, not ear-piercing, and not pleasant to the ear. However, there was a profound truth in it that all things returned to their true nature, and the great Tao was the simplest. It was Shi Tianyi's first time seeing him, but when he thought about the way he addressed Tao Master Cloudzen, he recognized him almost immediately. Among the disciples of his generation, only one person could have such an elegant demeanor. The current world wayfarer of the Taishu Temple, the eldest senior brother of Yan Mingyue, Pang Jie and Shi Tianyi, was Lin Daohan. He was the flag of the younger generation of the Taishu Temple. If there were no accidents, he would be a super genius who would take over the Taishu Temple in the future. He was the youngest Yuanian cultivator recorded in the human cultivation world of the Divine Land. However, he had been a disciple of the Taishu Temple since he was young and devoted himself to learning Tao. He rarely went out. The Taishu Temple also kept a low profile and protected him, so few people knew about him. But in the inner circle of Taishu Temple, Lin Daohan's name resounded like thunder, and everyone knew him. He was the only one among the younger generation of Taishu Temple disciples who could attend the core meeting. Just this fact alone was enough to explain everything. Silently looking at Lin Daohan, Shi Tianyi slowly bowed and said, "Senior brother Lin." Tao Master Cloudzen looked at Lin Daohan, then at Shi Tianyi and asked, "Daohan is now a world wayfarer. Why did you suddenly return?" Lin Daohan answered calmly, "I've just returned from the vast land of infinite wasteland. There are some new movements in the demon realm, and I'm about to report them to the Temple Master. Are you interested in listening, Uncle Master Cloudzen?" Tao Master Cloudzen shook his head slowly and said, "Just go ahead. I still have something to do with Tianyi." Lin Daohan nodded and bade farewell to the two. Then, they walked past each other. Before they parted, Dao Master Cloudson suddenly asked, Dao Han, what do you think of Xianmen Tianzong? Lin Daohan stopped and thought for a moment before answering, I can't see through him. After a pause, he added, I thought I had seen through him, but I found out later that I was wrong. His expression was calm as he admitted his mistake without any hesitation. Dao Master Cloudson nodded and fell into silence. Suddenly, a pair of bright eyes shone from the white clouds, filled with a myriad of emotions. Silently, a voice said, How long are you going to indulge that Lin Feng? Then, Xianlin Taoist slowly walked out from the white clouds. Surrounded by the white clouds, Lin Daohan's face looked a little unreal. The rise of the master of the celestial sect is not necessarily a bad thing for the overall strength of the human cultivation world in the divine land. You conservatives are stuck in your ways, sticking to the rules. You seem to be balancing all the forces and preserving the vitality of the human race, but in fact, you are just temporarily suppressing the conflicts. Silently, Xianlin Taoist said, What should break out will break out sooner or later, and it will be even more intense. You use the world as a chess piece, and in the end, you will only transfer the conflict and anger to the Taishu Temple. If that is the case, why don't you take the initiative to attack? Even if there is a temporary pain, the power of the divine land will only become stronger after the unification, and it will be better than the scattered sand now. Lin Daohan's voice was calm, and it seemed a little ethereal as it came through the white clouds. The first priority is to defend against the demons. This is the instruction left by the founding ancestor of the Taishu Temple. Why did he leave such an instruction? Because he lived through the primordial era that was the darkest for the human race, an era that you, Uncle Master Xianlin, and I have never experienced. The human race was at the bottom of the world, enslaved by the demons. We had no freedom or dignity, and human lives were worth less than grass. In order to prevent history from repeating itself, our Taishu Temple has been in seclusion for countless years, monitoring infinite wasteland continent. Lin Daohan said calmly, Let's not talk about success or failure if we act according to your guidelines, but it is destined to be a long process. During this process, if there is any movement in the demon realm, the civil strife in the human world caused by us will be beyond redemption. Lin Daohan and Xianlin Taoist looked at each other silently. In the end of the primordial era, after the war between the two worlds, the power of the ancient emperor declined, and he was killed by the ruthless emperor. After that, many forces united to depose and kill the ruthless emperor, but this caused the power of the divine land to be greatly damaged, and we lost the war. The desolate ancient star sea is still controlled by the demons to this day. Lin Daohan's tone was still calm. The past is still fresh in our minds, and the ruthless emperor is right in front of us. Uncle Master Xianlin, please reconsider. Being contradicted by Lin Daohan, Xianlin Taoist was not angry, and his emotions did not change at all. In fact, even if they had different opinions, he admired the young man in front of him. In the primordial era, why could the human race overthrow the demons and rise in the great heaven primordial world? It was because of the concentration of power and clear leadership. Xianlin Taoist said lightly, Under the rule of the human sovereign, thousands of powers are gathered in one person. If the thoughts of the sovereign deviate slightly, it is possible that they will go to extremes. But the Taishu Temple is different. Here, even the temple master cannot act arbitrarily. Hearing this seemingly meaningful sentence, Lin Daohan slightly lowered his eyes and replied silently, Uncle Master, you just said that the way of heaven is constant, but people's hearts are fickle. When it was really lonely at the top, who could guarantee that they would still maintain their original intentions? Xianlin Taoist looked at Lin Daohan and said lightly, We cultivate and understand the way of heaven, but we do not want to merge with the world. We want to transcend the world. I am still me. If I cannot grasp my original heart, how can I cultivate? We cultivators have an eternal heart of Taoism. Because of this, the eternal heart of Taoism means that our original heart is also eternal. Lin Daohan's voice was a little faint. Never satisfied, always looking forward, always longing for more. That is who we are. That is who we are. Lin Daohan shook his head. A faint smile suddenly appeared on his expressionless face. The heart of Taoism remains unchanged, but the original heart is indulged. How many people have truly grasped it since ancient times? The opposition between the conservative and radical factions of the Taishu Temple did not only exist in the line of thought. He cupped his fist at Xianlin Taoist and Tao Master Yunjing, then nodded at Shi Tianyi and turned to leave. During the brief conversation between Lin Daohan and Xianlin Taoist, Tao Master Yunjing and Shi Tianyi stood quietly at the side, not interrupting. When they saw Lin Daohan turn and leave, Shi Tianyi's eyes flickered as he watched the green-robed figure slowly disappear into the white clouds. Whether it was him, Marquis Jinghuan Liang'ern, or the others, the ultimate goal of the radical faction of the Taishu Temple was that seemingly ordinary young man. Shi Tianyi retracted his gaze and exhaled softly. First is my good brother, then Wang Lin, and then the others. Xianlin Taoist and Tao Master Yunjing gave him an indifferent look and nodded together. The battle with Wang Lin had dealt a blow to the momentum that Shi Tianyi had been cultivating for many years, but it had also made him more composed in terms of willpower, and he had successfully transformed. As long as he could defeat Shi Tianhao in the ancient heavenly dragon domain, the transformation would be complete, and he would be able to reach a higher level. Tao Master Yunjing cupped his fist at Xianlin Taoist and left. Xianlin Taoist did not say anything and continued to lead Shi Tianyi forward. They came to a cave abode, and as soon as they entered, they saw two people sitting opposite each other. One of them was not a real person, but a projection of his energy. It was obvious that he was a guest, but he was sitting in the main seat. However, his body was completely wrapped in a white cloud, making it hard to see him clearly. Silently, he sat there, surrounded by two streams of energy, one yin and one yang, one black and one white, as if they were the two poles of heaven and earth. He was the current temple master of the Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai. The person sitting opposite Yan Nanlai was a little boy, but his expression was serene, and his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. When Shi Tianyi saw the boy, he immediately bowed and said, "Master." This childlike person was Shi Tianyi's personal master after he entered the Taishu Temple, Kuang Heng. He was of the same generation as Yan Nanlai and Xianlin Taoist, and like Xianlin Taoist, he was a member of the Supreme Elders' Council of the Taishu Temple. He was a third-tier nascent divinity expert, and he had attained the Tao before Xianlin Taoist. After Shi Tianyi bowed to Yan Nanlai and Kuang Heng said coolly, "Stand aside and listen." He looked like a child, but his voice was extremely old. When put together, it gave off a strange, distorted feeling that was extremely uncoordinated. At Kuang Heng's cultivation base, his nascent divinity had fused with the Tao, and he was almost completely detached from heaven and earth. His every move should be harmonious. But Kuang Heng was the exact opposite. The tearing and distorted feeling was everywhere, but if one took a closer look, they would find an almost perfect harmony within it. It was a very mysterious feeling. After Xianlin Taoist took his seat, Kuang Heng looked at Yan Nanlai, who was hidden among the clouds, and said coolly, "During the sword meet on Tianji Peak, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the profound gate master, Lin Feng, had a pattern of black and white mixed with yin and yang on his forehead. What do you think, Temple Master?" Chapter 561. Within the white clouds, Yan Nanlai's clear voice rang out, "The great Tao of heaven and earth, all laws return to the same place. It is not impossible for the Taoist master of the Taoist sect to have similarities with my void yin-yang Tao." After a moment of silence, Kuang Heng said, As far as I know, the yin and yang pattern on the forehead of the master of Xianmen is perfectly balanced. They are opposite but also unified. They give birth to each other and seem to be endless. To be honest, it might be slightly better than the void yin-yang Tao. Yan Nanlai's tone did not change in the slightest. Everyone in the world says that the great Tao of Taishu is marvelous. It is the cultivation method closest to the heavenly Tao in the vast land of the divine continent. However, you and I both know that the Great Way is endless and there is no end to it. My Great Way of Taishu is more profound than other Tao technique. However, on the path of searching for the truth of heaven and earth, I am just a traveler. Our ancestors, including you and I, have been constantly perfecting and supplementing our Tao techniques in order to go further on this path. Yan Nanlai said silently, the void yin-yang Tao comprehends the Tao of space and yin and yang. It is not impossible that no one can surpass us in this aspect. In terms of swordsmanship, our Taishu Temple's Great Void Two Extremes Mystic Sword Technique and Sword of Indifference are superior to all other swordsmanship techniques in the world. They are only inferior to the Heaven Immortal Sword Qi of Shushan. In terms of martial arts, the Tempest Temple's Vairokanapam is publicly recognized as the best in the Divine Land. Even you and I agree. The childlike Kuang Heng sat upright, his gaze peaceful. I understand what you are saying, but what I am worried about is not so. He looked up at Yan Nanlai, who was hidden in the clouds. Why did Pang Jie and Qin Gang go to find the Taoist master? The white clouds finally moved slightly, and Yan Nanlai's voice came from within. Senior Brother Kuang, you suspect that the stone flute is indeed in his hands, and that he has already used it to go to that place, which is why he is today. Kuang Heng nodded. That's right. Yan Nanlai was silent for a while before replying, there is no basis for this. It is not advisable to come to a conclusion. The battle agreement between Tianyi and his disciple, Shi Tianhao, is about to be fulfilled. I will personally head to West Hill City. Kuang Heng did not mention the previous matter and changed the topic. Silently, Shi Tianyi stood behind him without saying a word. Kuang Heng continued, I want to open the Nine Heavens Imperial Court for Tianyi and perform the final baptism. Sure. Yan Nanlai agreed calmly. The white cloud carried the figure formed by his transcendence energy and gradually disappeared from the cave. After Yan Nanlai left, Xianlin Taoist slowly asked, Senior Brother Kuang, did the temple master mean that they won't interfere this time? Kuang Heng nodded silently. After mastering the divine light of creation and experiencing the baptism of the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, Tianyi will definitely be able to defeat Lin Feng's disciples, Xianlin Taoist said. With Lin Feng's usual style, he will definitely be entangled. It's not difficult to suppress him, but his Yujing Mountain is not easy to deal with. Can we ask the Haotian Mirror for help? Kuang Heng shook his head. The Haotian Mirror is facing Tianhuang mainland and cannot be moved easily. Let's ask the Void Yin-Yang Bell to come along. Xianlin Taoist said, Good. With the Void Yin-Yang Bell, we can break this man's Yujing Mountain. Xianmen Tianzong's biggest shortcoming isn't that he doesn't have many connections. Outstanding disciples need time to grow. Kuang Heng's tone was very calm. Their biggest problem is that they don't have their own creation-grade magic treasure to protect their destiny. Standing in different positions, looking at the problem from a different angle, the answer would also be different. In the past, the Wind God sect, the Yu family, and now the Heaven Pool sect, the Celerita's swordsmanship sect, and the Wilderness Sword sect, Xianmen Tianzong's problem was that they lacked Yuanying and primordial soul experts. They urgently needed Xiao Yan and the others to grow and replenish their strength. However, in the position of Yan Nanlai, Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, Liang Pan, and Zhu Hongwu, Xianmen Tianzong's biggest shortcoming was that they did not have creation-grade magic treasures. There was great terror between life and death. The nirvana of heaven and earth was above life and death. It was even more terrifying. even primordial soul experts like Quang Heng and Xianlin Taoist, who were at the third tier of the primordial soul realm and at the Tao integration realm, would also walk towards the end of the road as the lifespan of the world came to an end. When the nest was destroyed, there would be no eggs left intact. Creation treasures were supreme treasures that had the hope of resisting the nirvana of heaven and earth. They helped people traverse countless eras, pass through the nirvana tribulation of heaven and earth, and walk towards a new life. Spirit nurturing, transformation, and Mahayana, these three grades of magic treasures had different powers due to the difference in the Tao arts, materials, and cultivation of the refiner. It was possible for a lower grade to subdue a higher grade. However, between them and creation-grade magic treasures, there was an almost insurmountable gap. Lin Feng's Yujing Mountain was extremely powerful, but after witnessing it in the cloudy forest world, Yan Nanlai and Xianlin Taoist both came to the same conclusion. To be able to have such power, it was due to the combination of Lin Feng's own willpower, the body of Yujing Mountain, the treasured tree on the mountain peak, and the purple qi outside the mountain. As long as it was a combination, it meant that it was not truly a unified whole, which meant that there were flaws. Quang Hing said, "This person is used to hiding. Although creation-grade magic treasures are rare, we can't be sure that he definitely doesn't have any." Xianlin Taoist's gaze was calm. "Since that's the case, then bring along the supreme formation breaking drum. With these two treasures, even if he has creation-grade magic treasures, there's nothing to fear." Quang Hing said, "That's it. Go and prepare." Xianlin Taoist nodded and got up to leave the cave abode. Quang Hing turned to look at Shirtiani. "Follow me, let's prepare to receive the 9 Heavens Imperial Court's baptism." Shirtiani's gaze was calm as he bowed to Quang Hing. The 9 Heavens Imperial Court's baptism was said to be the grandest and most powerful baptism in the Taishu Temple. Among his disciples of the same generation, only Lin Daohan had enjoyed it before. The others, including Pang Jie, Yan Mingyue, and the others, had never experienced it before. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng and his disciples welcomed and sent off people, accepting the congratulatory gifts from various forces because of Wang Lin and Zhu Yi's nascent soul formation. Purple Heaven Path's Tao Master Lan Ting and Northern Militant Royal Court's Prince Yu Xian personally came to visit. Of course, they didn't just congratulate Lin Feng's disciples. More importantly, they had something to discuss with Lin Feng. Later, the two would follow Lin Feng to the Great Qin Dynasty's capital, West Hill City, to watch the decisive battle between the big and small Shirtu. The Great Qin Dynasty, Purple Heaven Path, Northern Militant Royal Court, Heavenly Sword Sect, Sun and Moon Sword Sect, Thunderbolt Sword Sect, Constellation Sword Sect, and Celerita's Sword Sect all sent congratulatory gifts. The Reincarnation Sect, Hell Path, and Wilderness Sword Sect, which rarely contacted each other, also sent congratulatory gifts. The Great Zhou Dynasty and the Songhai Sword Sect, which was close to them, also expressed their congratulations. In the Sand Continent, the Heavenly Trade Pavilion also sent congratulatory gifts, not to mention the local small and medium-sized sects of Kunlun Mountain. After receiving Tao Master Lan Ting and Northern Militant Prince Yu Xian, Lin Feng handed the rest of the work to Xiao Yan and Wang Lin. He himself entered the mysterious Heaven Time cave alone and came in front of the giant sword case. Below the sword case, there was the dying remnant soul of the Golden Crow Great Saint and the 2 swords of Xiaoyang and Taiyin, which were unable to struggle at all. Lin Feng came in front of the sword case that was as heavy as a mountain, bent his index and middle fingers, and lightly tapped on the surface of the sword case. The sword case suddenly shook and made a roaring sound. The sound almost condensed into a substance, and ripples spread out in all directions. Wherever the sound wave passed, it was like a sharp blade cutting through the void. Just the sound of the sword was almost comparable to other divine weapons. Lin Feng nodded. Sure enough, after the heavenly immortal sword qi, the remnant soul of the Golden Crow Great Saint, and the two swords of Shaoyang and Taiyin. The sharpness of this sword has reached a higher level. A Tai Chi pattern appeared on his forehead, black and white, and began to rotate. As the Tai Chi pattern rotated, Lin Feng's entire body also transformed into the image of Tai Chi, black and white blended together, constantly rotating and evolving the mysteries of creation. It was vast and boundless, and there was no end to it. It was so huge that it was like a universe. Lin Feng suddenly revealed his Yuan Shen incarnation, and as the yin and yang rotated, it directly swallowed the huge sword case. The Tai Chi pattern suddenly shook, and the originally harmonious black and white picture was instantly stirred into a mess of chaos. The peerless sword in the sword case had sword intent that could destroy the world. Even the Tai Chi world formed by Lin Feng's Yuan Shen directly swallowed it like this, causing the sword intent to go berserk. Lin Feng's consciousness was extremely clear. This is the last chance to refine this sword. Otherwise, when the blade is honed by 2/3 and the sword intent becomes more refined, it will almost be impossible to refine. Even if my cultivation level continues to increase in the future, even if I can reach the point of destroying this sword, I will not be able to subdue and refine it. In the void, Lin Feng's primordial spirit avatar constantly twisted. There were a few moments when it was almost about to be torn apart. Cracks even appeared in the chaotic world, and from the damaged areas, a clear light that was tens of thousands of meters fierce and domineering faintly seeped out. Every time this happened, Lin Feng's bell of creation would appear and transform into the gate of creation. When the gate opened, endless power of creation would descend and restore Lin Feng's damaged Yuan Shen incarnation. This cycle continued endlessly. Under the efforts of the bell of creation and Lin Feng's Yuan Shen, after an unknown period of time, the Tai Chi world formed by his Yuan Shen finally stabilized. The blurry chaos gradually turned back into a Tai Chi pattern that was black and white but fused with yin and yang. A moment later, the Tai Chi pattern spun in the void and transformed back into Lin Feng's appearance. His face showed a rare hint of weakness, but his eyes were full of vigor. From time to time, a ferocious clear light would shoot out from the Tai Chi pattern on his forehead. This sword shall be called the Heaven-Punishing Sword. A faint smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. If I use the Great Qin Dynasty's Dharma Treasure or the Shushan Immortal Sky Sword for another round of training, this sword should be able to be 2/3 unsheathed. He casually suppressed the remnant soul of the Golden Crow Great Sage and the two Shushan swords. At his current cultivation level, it no longer took much effort to suppress them. Lin Feng came out of the Dark Sky Time Cave and stood at the peak of the Dark Sky Treasure Tree. He laughed softly and said, "Get ready, we are leaving." His voice was instantly transmitted to the Jade Capital Mountain, where Shi Tianhao and the others were. Immediately, several rainbows flew out from each cave abode and gathered towards Lin Feng. Chapter 562. Lin Feng stood at the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree. Several rainbows flew over and lined up in front of him. The little Shi Tianhao stood in the center, while Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Yang Qing stood beside him. On the other side were Xiao Zhener, Luo Qingwu, Li Yuanfang, Tunten, Zhuge Fengling, and Jun Zining. Zen Master Dade stood in front of the juniors. In addition, Su Yunxing, Ying Luojia, Lu Xiaofeng, Li Xingfei, Fatty Yanwei, and Xiao Huan followed behind Xiao Yan and the others. King Philian, King Kuei-Nio, and King Whale all transformed into human forms and stood on the other side. Dao Jiqiang also stood behind them, listening to their orders respectfully. Kong Nanhua, Miao Shihao, and Jie Yu were all in seclusion, so Lin Feng didn't want to disturb them. Everyone present bowed towards Lin Feng in unison. Dao Master Lan Ting and Prince Yuxian, who were guests on the mountain, also came to Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled. "A month is coming. We'll leave today." He waved his hand and a purple cloud extended into the void, turning into a path that opened up the endless space. Lin Feng took the lead. Dao Master Lan Ting and Prince Yuxian looked at each other, smiled, and followed Lin Feng side by side. The others also stepped onto the cloud. Through the void, everyone returned to the vast Thousand World, and West Hill City appeared in front of them. Yujing Mountain had long left the Kunlun mountain range, and arrived at the territory of the Great Qin dynasty. Below them was the most magnificent city in the Divine Land, West Hill City. Everyone narrowed their eyes and could vaguely see hundreds of colorful light rays converging toward West Hill City from all directions. The rays of light were not tangible, but rather a mysterious and illusory scene. They were light shadows formed by the condensation of countless spirit qi. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that these rays of light were images of true dragons. The dragon tails stretched out into the vast world, while the dragon heads gathered in West Hill City. These dragons of light were condensed from the imperial Dao aura of the Great Qin dynasty. The three great demon kings reverted to their original forms. Everyone landed on the backs of the three great demon kings and descended. The speed of their descent was slow, indicating that they were not hostile. West Hill City also reacted immediately. The void split open and three figures walked out. They were all old acquaintances. The one in front was Prince Peaceful Liang, Shi Zongyue, and the other two were Sword Venerable Flying Snow and Dao Venerable Chang Lo. When the three of them saw Lin Feng, they cupped their hands together and said, "Welcome, Master of the Celestial Sect, to visit West Hill City." This was Lin Feng's first official visit to Western Tomb City. The entire Qin dynasty regarded him with great importance, and three primordial soul stage experts came out to welcome him. Lin Feng smiled. "You're too polite." Prince Peaceful Liang, Shi Zongyue, greeted Dao Venerable Blue Thunder, Northern Militant Yuxian, and Buddhist Monk Dade. His gaze finally landed on Shi Tianhao, who was beside Lin Feng. At this moment, Shi Tianhao was around 13 years old, but his cultivation was extremely pure. He was at the late stage of golden elixir. His mana was vigorous and vast, and when he opened and closed his eyes, divine light flowed. Shi Zongyue looked at him and nodded to himself. His gaze then swept past Xiao Yan and Wang Lin. Xiao Yan, with his late-stage golden elixir cultivation, defeated all the cultivators in the Yu clan, except for the clan master, Yu Xintao. His domineering aura was monstrous, and he had 4 great true fires. The celestial fire lotus, which fused 3 fires, made even Shi Zongyue surprised. Right now, Xiao Yan's 3 fire lotus could not threaten him, but as Xiao Yan's cultivation increased, the power of the perishing fire lotus would continue to increase. What's more, if the 4 fire lotus appeared, it would be even more domineering. Although Wang Lin looked ordinary at the moment, Shi Zongyue, Sword Venerable Flying Snow, and Dao Venerable Chang Lu would not underestimate him. His late-stage golden elixir fought against the early-stage Yuanying's dual pupil, Shi Tianyi, at the cost of his temporary injury in exchange for the destruction of Shi Tianyi's left dual pupil, which was equivalent to the end of the legend of dual pupils. And now, Wang Lin had formed Yuanying, and his mana and supernatural power were even more amazing. Sect Master Lin, His Majesty has set up a banquet in the palace. He invites you, Dao Venerable Blue Thunder, and His Royal Highness Yuxian. Shi Zongyue looked at Buddhist Monk Dade. "Master, if it is convenient, please join us. There are special vegetarian dishes prepared." Buddhist Monk Dade smiled. "I appreciate His Majesty's kindness, but I won't join in the fun. I just need a quiet room to do my homework." Shi Zongyue did not insist and immediately nodded in agreement. Under his lead, everyone entered West Hill City. In front of the Imperial City, Lin Feng looked at the disciples and smiled. "Tianhao can follow me in. The rest of you can move freely." As the largest city in the Divine Land, West Hill City has a unique atmosphere. Xiao Yan smiled. The disciples will take good care of themselves. Master, please rest assured. Lin Feng at once nodded his head, bringing Shi Tianhao and walking into the imperial city together. Xiao Yan and the others glanced at each other, all smiling, saying, "Everyone find their own programs, keep in touch and support each other at any time." A cultivator from the great Qin dynasty who was in charge of receiving them hesitated and whispered, "There are disciples from the Taishu Temple who have also arrived in West Hill City." Xiao Yin raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Oh, that's good." Wang Lin's expression was indifferent, his face expressionless. Seeing this, the cultivator immediately swallowed the words he wanted to say. The news of Lin Feng and the others entering the city, as well as Lin Feng bringing Shi Tianhao into the great Qin dynasty's imperial city, quickly spread in the city. Everyone knew that as the time approached, the battle between the two Shi brothers was about to officially begin. In a courtyard in West Hill City, there was a formation operating in the courtyard. It seemed small, but it was actually a completely different world. A middle-aged man sat in the house. He was not tall, wore a silk scarf on his head, and was dressed in a white robe. He was dressed like a Confucian scholar and had a white velvet cloak draped over his shoulders. He looked in the direction of the imperial city and gently exhaled. Wherever his breath went, it seemed to turn the house into a world of hot and cold, where ice and lava coexisted. This middle-aged man was the current sect master of the Heaven Pool sect, Tao Master Icefire, Chao Wei. Chao Wei withdrew his gaze and flipped his palm. A few lights appeared, one of which was the most dazzling. It was a three-legged cauldron with a landscape pattern carved on it, as if thousands of miles of mountains and rivers were carved on it. Around this three-legged cauldron, there were 7 small bronze cauldrons flying and circling around it. Chao Wei's gaze moved slightly. 2 more child cauldrons, then it'll be complete. 2 huge holes appeared in the void in front of him. One of them emitted red light and was incomparably hot, while the other emitted white light and was incomparably cold. A voice came from the red hole. "The battle between the 2 little fellows has dragged Taishu Temple into it. This is a pleasant surprise. Uncle Master Hor is right," Chao Wei said silently. "Lin Feng has become enemies with Taishu Temple for a mere disciple. It's extremely unwise. His previous path has been too smooth, especially when Shushan suffered a loss at the Tianjia Peak Sword Trials. He's a little carried away. He doesn't seem to have thought about why Taishu Temple is called the number 1 Holy Land in the Divine Prefecture. This title has never been self-proclaimed by Taishu Temple. It's universally acknowledged that it's an existence that can suppress the entire human cultivation world single-handedly. Shushan is so arrogant, yet they've lost their confidence in the face of Taishu Temple. Taishu Temple only sent 1 Dharma treasure to Tempest Temple, and Tempest Temple was immediately hit by everyone when it was down. They're both holy lands, yet they ended up being destroyed. If Taishu Temple doesn't express its stance, Tempest Temple won't be destroyed." An even calmer voice came from the white hole. "Accepting that dual-pupiled person into the sect and supporting him should be the intention of Taishu Temple's internal Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist. It doesn't represent the overall will of Taishu Temple." In the red light hole, Elder Hua snorted. "The mainstream opinion within the Taishu Temple is leaning towards living in seclusion, with most of their energy being placed on infinite wasteland. If not for this, at least half of the vast land in the Divine Prefecture would belong to the Taishu Temple, and we would have to look up to them. However, Taishu Temple is ultimately a whole entity. The Reincarnation Sect and the 6 Paths of Reincarnation have been fighting internally for tens of thousands of years. If they're really faced with external enemies, they'll still unite. Yan Nanlai and the rest won't really ignore Kuang Heng and the rest." Elder Hua sneered. "Moreover, even if it's just Kuang Heng and the rest, how can they be weak? If they split from Taishu Temple, they'll immediately become another holy land." Chao Wei said, This is a good opportunity. I think the Shushan sword sect will also make a move. They definitely won't let the grudge of the sword trials of Tianjia Peak go away so easily. However, as the host, the Qin dynasty, it's hard to predict what their thoughts will be. This will create many uncertain factors. However, the more chaotic the situation is, the more advantageous it is for us. He raised his head and sighed. Martial uncles, I have a feeling that this might be our last chance. If Xianmen Tianzong wins, our chances of obtaining the Bronze Void Cauldron in the future will be even slimmer. If Xianmen Tianzong loses, the item will most likely fall into the hands of Taishu Temple. Then, our chances will be even slimmer. Elder Bing, who was in the hole of white light, said in a deep voice, "It's precisely because of this that the two of us have finally decided to come out of seclusion in advance." Elder Hua said, "Chao Wei, if you have any ideas, just go ahead and do it. If necessary, we'll lend you a hand." Chao Wei nodded. "I understand." His gaze then turned towards the direction of the royal city. The time will come very soon. At the same time, in the royal city, Lin Feng was being guided by Prince Anliang Shizongyu. Halfway through, he raised his eyebrows slightly and turned back to look in a certain direction. His lips curled into a faint smile. After taking a glance, he turned back and followed Shizongyu into the main hall of the royal city's palace. In the hall, Qin Emperor Shizongyu was sitting on the dragon throne. Seeing Lin Feng's arrival, he nodded in greeting. "Sect leader Lin, how have you been?" Lin Feng smiled. "Fellow Taoist, it's been a long time." He looked to the other side. There sat a middle-aged man dressed like a scholar. It was the great Qin Empire's minister, Wu Qingru. When Wu Qingru saw Lin Feng, he stood up and cupped his hand. "Sect leader Lin, it's an honor to meet you. I've also heard of your name for a long time." Lin Feng stared at Wu Qingru for a moment, his eyes flashing. Indeed, seeing is believing. Wu Qingru smiled. "Sect leader Lin, you flatter me." On the other side, after Qin Emperor Shizongyu greeted Lin Feng, his gaze also fell on Shi Tianhao, who was beside Lin Feng. Chapter 563. The banquet to welcome Lin Feng and his disciple was not grand. There were not many participants, but they were all core figures of the great Qin dynasty, demonstrating Qin Emperor Stonefeather's sincerity. The simple banquet could be said to be a joyous occasion for both the host and the guest. After the banquet, Lin Feng and his disciple left. Wu Qingru and the other officials also took their leave, leaving only Stonefeather to return to his chambers to recuperate. The furnishings of Stonefeather's sleeping quarters were very simple. The heavy clothes he wore had transformed into casual clothes. He ascended a small building, and it was as if he was in the void. He looked at the starry sky that seemed to be within reach and remained silent. "Your Majesty, how did the discussion go with the Master of the Celestial Gate?" A voice sounded behind Qin Emperor Stonefeather. The tone was soft and pleasant to the ear. The owner of the voice was a young girl who looked to be only 16 years old. She wore a luxurious palace dress and exuded a royal aura. Her steps were light as she stepped through the void to Stonefeather's side. As her wide sleeves fluttered, her temperament was extraordinary. Her entire body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of clear light, making it impossible to see her appearance clearly. It was only when she came to Stonefeather's side that the clear light faded, revealing an indescribably beautiful face. Her beautiful eyes flowed, her peach cheeks wore a smile, and she was indescribably moving. She stood next to Stonefeather like gentle green water surrounding a towering mountain. Stonefeather did not turn around, his gaze still fixed on the starry sky. "You're here, Nuanyuan?" The woman titled concubine Nuanyuan said with a light smile, "You've seen both Big Stone and Little Stone. Who do you think is more outstanding?" Stonefeather said indifferently, "The Big Stone who was defeated by Wang Lin is not comparable to Little Stone, but it's hard to say now." Concubine Nuanyuan raised her eyebrows slightly. The big stone who has the reputation of being invincible, the double pupils god, and his aura is like the sun in the sky, is not comparable to little stone. Now that he has been defeated by another disciple of the Master of the Celestial Gate, will he rise to a higher level? Stonefeather said, "This depends on what Taishu Temple has done these days." His eyes moved slightly. The Divine Land is the #1 holy land of cultivation for the human race. After all, it is well deserved. If there was no external pressure from the demon race, the Taishu Temple would have been able to unify the human world of cultivation. Concubine Nuan smiled. Slowly, she said, "This concubine feels that the situation of the world is gradually showing signs of change. Your Majesty, your chance might be coming." Stonefeather didn't say anything, but he finally turned around and walked downstairs. Concubine Nuan followed behind him with a smile. At the same time, Lin Feng stood outside the imperial city. Silently, he looked up at the starry sky above his head. Shi Tianhao stood beside him with a rare calm expression. After a long while, Shi Tianhao said softly, "Master, I'm going to the Shi family's mansion in West Hill City." Lin Feng withdrew his gaze and lightly said, "Do what you want to do." Finished speaking, his figure gradually disappeared from where he stood. Shi Tianhao bowed in the direction where Lin Feng had originally been and then walked in another direction. That was the Shi family's base in West Hill City. He, who had always been impatient, had a relaxed expression at this moment. His steps were neither fast nor slow. It was just that as he walked, there was a faint chanting of the great Tao of heaven and earth, rising and falling with Shi Tianhao's footsteps. As he walked, a smile appeared on Shi Tianhao's face. Looking to the side of the street, he saw a young man dressed in purple with a white robe draped over him smiling at him. The young man was his second senior apprentice brother, Zhu Yi. The two brothers looked at each other and smiled. Neither spoke. Zhu Yi's palms tapped lightly, as if playing an ancient piece of music. The ancient music matched Shi Tianhao's footsteps, making his aura even more astonishing. Shi Tianhao nodded slightly, withdrew his gaze, and continued to walk towards the Shi family's mansion. In all the mansions of the Tianqi sect in the distance, Chao Wei's gaze seemed to pass through the void. Silently, he stared at Shi Tianhao. His gaze moved, but in the end he withdrew it. Silently, he said, "Qingyuan." A young man quickly came before him and bowed, "Master." It was Chao Wei's proud disciple, Song Qingyuan. Chao Wei said, "You can go now." Song Qingyuan respectfully replied, "Disciple obeys." After bowing and bidding farewell to Chao Wei again, Song Qingyuan left the mansion and walked in West Hill City. With his fellow disciples to guide him, he quickly found his target. It was a middle-aged man who looked calm and capable. His face was full of hardships. He wore a purple robe and walked on the streets of West Hill City. His gaze faintly revealed a sense of alienation as if it was a lifetime ago. In the past, he also lived in this city. Although it was not a long time and he spent most of the time outside, at this moment, walking on the long street, he still had a faint feeling that things remained the same, but people had changed. The middle-aged man was naturally Dao Jiqiang. He lowered his head and laughed at himself. Suddenly, his footsteps stopped. Looking at the handsome young man in white with a gentle smile in front of him, Dao Jiqiang smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. "Zhenren Song, how have you been?" Song Qingyuan, who wore a white robe and had an impeccable appearance, also cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Steward Dao, it's been a long time." The ancients often say that things in the world are unpredictable. Looking at you, I have a deep feeling. Dao Jiqiang sighed. Song Qingyuan clearly knew his background, so he did not beat around the bush. "Zhenren Song, please speak frankly. If I can do it, I'll be happy to do it. If I really can't, please don't make it difficult for me. I'm just an errand boy in Xianmen Tianzong." Song Qingyuan looked at Dao Jiqiang and smiled calmly. However, the news that he said made Dao Jiqiang feel like he was struck by lightning. My master, Dao Master Icefire, personally performed a secret method to repair the damage caused by Yuding's broken divine soul. Her damaged memory has been restored by 70 to 80%. As time goes by, all of her memory will be restored. Song Qingyuan smiled, however, because of the secret method. Yuding is a little listless now, so she is still recuperating in Heaven Lake. When her body is better, I believe she will come to find you as soon as possible. The sect will not set any obstacles for her. Dao Jiqiang was a little dazed at first, but he quickly came to his senses. He looked at Song Qingyuan and only felt bitter in his heart. Thank you for your pity, Dao Master Icefire, Dao Jiqiang said with difficulty. Song Qingyuan walked forward and passed by Dao Jiqiang. He smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, I'm just asking you for a small favor. You don't need to do anything, just tell me something. It's not the time yet. I'm just saying hello to you today and catching up. When the time is right, I'll naturally come to find you." Song Qingyuan brushed past Dao Jiqiang and his figure quickly disappeared, leaving only Dao Jiqiang standing there in a daze. After a long time, Dao Jiqiang gritted his teeth and went all the way back to the residence that the great Qin dynasty arranged for Xianmen Tianzong. After entering the residence and confirming that the people of Heaven Lake sect would not pay attention to him, Dao Jiqiang crushed a voice transmission crystal. "Sect Master, I have something to report to you." After listening to Dao Jiqiang's report, Lin Feng did not give him any additional instructions. He only said one sentence, "You father and daughter will be reunited." There was nothing else, but Dao Jiqiang suddenly felt his heart completely calm down. "Please rest assured, Sect Master. I will adapt to the situation and deal with Song Qingyuan." "You play with him slowly," Lin Feng said indifferently. Dao Jiqiang understood what he meant and nodded. "I understand." After Lin Feng ended the call with him, he turned his attention back to himself. He looked at the scene in front of him with a faint smile. Interesting. In front of him, a pair of sisters stood by a small lake in the city, and in front of them were several adults. Of the two girls, one was dressed in red, Luo Qinggu, and the other was dressed in green, Jun Zining. The two of them were originally just playing together in West Hill City. Not long ago, they came near this small lake together and saw people surrounding the lake. In the center of the crowd, two sides were vaguely confronting each other. On one side were three young cultivators, all of whom were in the golden elixir period. They were dressed in black and looked indifferent. Jun Zining and Luo Qinggu looked a little strange after carefully observing them. They grew up in the ancient Yuan Tian realm and rarely came to the divine land. Therefore, they did not know most of the forces in the cultivation world of the human race in the vast thousand domains. However, they could roughly recognize the origins of these three young cultivators. The two little sisters' eyes fell on the cuffs of the three young men's black robes. There was a scarlet pattern on them. It was the symbol of the reincarnation sect's hell path. The Yang family, one of the 7 great families of the ancient Yuan-Tian realm, had always been at odds with the Luo family. The force behind the Yang family was the reincarnation sect's hell path. When the battle between the two sides reached a climax, the hell path would sometimes intervene. Luo Qinggu and Jun Zining could not be more familiar with their clothes. Opposite the 3 cultivators from the Tao of Hell were 2 young cultivators in white robes, one male and one female. The young man was extraordinarily handsome, and the young woman was even more elegant and refined, dazzling people. But what was more eye-catching was the white cloud tattooed on the hem of their robes. Not to mention the divine land, even Luo Qinggu and Jun Zining, who were from the ancient Yuan-Tian realm, could clearly recognize this symbol. It was the sect symbol of the Taishu Temple, the first sacred land of the great heaven world. "Please advise me, fellow Taoists." The white-clothed girl's voice was soft, and her figure looked weak, like a rabbit that was easily frightened. Such behavior inevitably made the onlookers murmur in their hearts, Is this the successor of the Taishu Temple? The three Hell Path disciples opposite them looked calm. The one on the right took the lead and said, "Please advise me." As he said that, he put his palms together, and the surface of the lake suddenly lit up. A huge array appeared, covering the entire surface of the lake. As the light flashed, the array seemed to communicate with another world. There was a flood, and all living things were annihilated. It was like hell. This was an illusion created by the Hell Path disciple using his own array magic. Although it was not a real flood hell, if the opponent fell into it, they would be swallowed by the flood and suffer a disaster. Chapter 564. The handsome young man stared at the formation on the lake and smiled faintly. "I'll do it." "All right." The young lady in white had a beautiful appearance. She spoke softly and politely, exuding a delicate aura. Silently, the young man said, "Taishu Temple's Ding Runfeng, please advise me." He made a hand seal with one hand, and small specks of light suddenly gathered above his palm. The light spots were extremely tiny, smaller than fireflies. They were like grains of millet, circling in the air and forming mysterious trajectories before gathering together. Although the light spots were tiny, they were extremely righteous. They were pure yang and contained a power that made one's heart palpitate. The expressions of the three Path of Hell cultivators changed slightly. They seemed to have thought of something, and their faces were filled with disbelief. The three of them stared at Ding Runfeng, as if they were hoping that their guess was wrong. However, it was a pity that things did not go according to their wishes. As the millet-like light spots gathered more and more, they soon formed a pure golden ball of light above Ding Runfeng's palm, emitting destructive energy waves. Taishu Temple's pure yang mystic thunder. The Tao technique that you cultivate is actually the pure yang mystic thunder? The Path of Hell disciple's expression was extremely solemn, and his words caused the surrounding crowd to be in an uproar. Taishu Temple's principles of Taishu was publicly recognized as the top Tao technique in the Divine Land, especially the Tiansu techniques, namely the Supreme Wang Qing Tao and the Void Yin Yang Tao, which were the most outstanding. At the same time, their reputations spread far and wide across the great heaven primordial world. However, in reality, apart from the Tiansu techniques, there were many other top Tao techniques recorded in the Principles of Taishu Tao, such as the Supreme Dragon Transformation Scripture, the Taishu Temple Method, and so on. They were all top Tao techniques, and any one of them could cause other cultivators to fight over them. There was a very special Tao art amongst them, and it was called the Pure Yang Profound Heart Technique. It was comparatively unpopular because there were very few people that cultivated it, and in the boundless years since the ancient times until now, those that were able to truly cultivate it to mastery were like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. However, this Tao technique was extremely famous in the Divine Land, because it had an extremely high requirement to practice. The Pure Yang Profound Heart Technique, as the name suggested, if the cultivator had a pure yang body, then practicing this Tao technique would bring out the best in one's body, allowing one to unleash one's potential to the extreme. Similarly, a pure yang body would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when cultivating this Tao technique. If there were no accidents, he would be able to achieve great success. Because of this, there were very few cultivators in the Taishu Temple who chose to practice the Pure Yang Mysterious Heart Technique. Whenever a disciple practiced this technique, it usually meant one thing. This person's innate yang qi was extremely strong, and he even had the legendary Pure Yang body. The Pure Yang Mystic Heart Divine Lightning was one of the top few divine abilities derived from the Pure Yang Mystic Heart Technique. Those who did not have a pure yang body would not be able to cultivate the Pure Yang Mystic Heart Divine Lightning, even if they had some small success when cultivating the Pure Yang Mystic Heart Technique. The surrounding crowd looked at Ding Runfeng and the golden ball of light in his palm, and their expressions became extremely solemn. Pure yang body, pure yin body, and pure yang body were both extremely rare and precious body constitutions that could only be encountered by luck. Cultivating the appropriate Tao technique would allow one to achieve twice the result with half the effort and make tremendous progress. In the entire great heaven primordial world, there were very few who could surpass these body constitutions. And the pure yang mystic heart technique was the Tao technique that was most suitable for a pure yang body. With the combination of the two, everyone had no choice but to pay attention to Ding Runfeng. Those with discerning eyes could already tell that Ding Runfeng looked like a young man, and his actual age was not far from his appearance. At such a young age, he had already reached the mid-stage of the golden elixir realm. Moreover, he had such a shocking talent like the pure yang body. The potential and future that he had displayed was extremely great. One of the surrounding cultivators sighed and said, "Now, it's rumored that the master of Mystic Gate is full of demons. However, no one will forget that the Taishu Temple has gathered the most talented human cultivators in the entire divine land." Putting aside the fact that the few Tao world walkers from before were dragons and phoenixes among men, that dual-pupiled person, Shi Tianyi, and this Ding Runfeng before us are all geniuses among geniuses, demons among demons. Ding Runfeng calmly glanced at the surface of the lake beside him. With a light tap of his finger, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from the golden ball of light. With a flash of golden light, the formation on the surface of the lake suddenly shattered, and the water that filled the sky dissipated. The three disciples of the Naraka Tao looked solemn. They were from the reincarnation sect, and had reached the golden elixir period realm at a young age. They were arrogant by nature, and when they heard someone praising the disciples of the Taishu Temple, they ridiculed the Xianlin Taoist who had been defeated by Lin Feng at their ancestral land. Coincidentally, Ding Runfeng and Ding Runfeng passed by. Ding Runfeng and Ding Runfeng were not enraged, and only suggested a battle. Although the three of them were slightly regretful, they accepted the battle considering that they were all at the late stage of the golden elixir realm. However, when they saw Ding Runfeng's pure yang godly thunder, the three of them knew that even if Ding Runfeng was only at the mid-stage of the golden elixir realm, his supernatural power was still above theirs. For a moment they were in a dilemma. Just when the three disciples of the Naraka Tao were in a dilemma, a middle-aged man in a black robe suddenly appeared from the void. A Yuanying realm cultivator? The crowd was in an uproar. Looking at the middle-aged man's attire and the waves of supernatural power that he did not conceal, they recognized that he was the Yuanying patriarch of the reincarnation sect's hell path. The middle-aged man in a black robe glared at the three disciples of the Naraka Tao, and the three of them lowered their heads. A smile appeared on Ding Runfeng's handsome face, and he cupped his hands at the middle-aged man in a black robe. "Senior, if you want to continue the battle, I can keep you company." The moment he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. No one had expected that a mid-stage golden elixir realm cultivator would not only be unafraid of an early-stage Yuanying realm cultivator, but he even dared to take the initiative to challenge him. Everyone knew that the disciples of the Taishu Temple were the elites of the elites, the strongest of the strong, but they had always kept a low profile. Although Ding Runfeng's words were polite, his arrogance was obvious. Wait, at such a sensitive time, could it be? In the crowd, the sisters, Luo Qingwu and Jun Zining, looked at each other. Could it be that he's here for Xianmen Tianzong? Xianmen Tianzong, Lin Feng's disciple, had been in the limelight in recent years, so much so that even the name of the genius successor of the Taishu Temple had been overshadowed. Previously, among the younger generation of Taishu Temple disciples, there was Shi Tianyi, who had double pupils. With his accumulated prestige, he could suppress Shi Tianhao and the others. However, after he was blinded by Wang Lin in the void battlefield, the situation was completely reversed. As a result, today, when the monstrous level of the sect's successors was mentioned, many people's first reaction would be Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, and the others from Xianmen Tianzong. In recent days, Wang Lin and Zhu Yi had successively transcended their tribulations and formed their nascent souls, causing their reputation to soar. The middle-aged man in a black robe glanced at Ding Runfeng coldly. Ding Ruanfeng's expression was indifferent, and he calmly looked at him with a smile. "Humph." The middle-aged man in a black robe did not say a word. He pointed with one hand, and immediately, a huge Dharma formation enveloped Ding Runfeng. Although the other party was a direct disciple of the Taishu Temple, he would not allow a cultivator from the Golden Elixir period to humiliate him. He would not kill him, but he would definitely teach him a lesson. The Dharma formation of the middle-aged man in a black robe was different from that of the Naraka Tao's disciples from the Golden Elixir period. The Dharma formation covered a vast area. If he had not controlled it by manipulating space, the Dharma formation could have covered half of West Hill City. Of course, that would have alerted West Hill City's guardian formation, and he would have to bear the consequences. Ding Runfeng looked at the middle-aged man in a black robe calmly. He did not feel that his words and actions had offended the other party in any way. From his point of view, what he had said was nothing out of the ordinary. The pure young mystic heart divine thunder floated above his palm. This time, he did not activate it. Instead, he dispersed the golden ball of light. This scene stunned the onlookers. A powerful thunder technique like the pure yang mystic heart divine thunder was the perfect weapon to break a Dharma formation. I've long heard that the reincarnation sect's hell path is famous for its Dharma formations. Today, I'd like to ask this senior about Dharma formations, Ding Runfeng said calmly. He put his palms together and clapped them gently. Suddenly, thousands of golden lights shot out. The golden lights crisscrossed in the air, forming a grid that looked like a chessboard. The golden grid clashed with the middle-aged man's Dharma formation, and they immediately came to a deadlock. The lights and shadows in the grid changed, and the Dharma formation was constantly being cut. The middle-aged man in a black robe was surprised. He realized that although he had the upper hand in terms of the total amount of Dharma power, his advantage was much smaller than when he was in the Yuanying period against an ordinary cultivator from the Golden Elixir period. Moreover, the other party's Dharma power was refined and pure. It was extremely strong and of high quality. Against the middle-aged man in a black robe, there was still room for him to fight back. What surprised the middle-aged man in a black robe even more was that Ding Runfeng had an extremely high level of attainment in Dharma formations. Even he could not easily defeat him. The middle-aged man in a black robe was interested. He simply gave up on the idea of suppressing his opponent in terms of Dharma power and fought Ding Runfeng purely with the Dharma formations. The two of them entangled with each other with two Dharma formations and fought endlessly. The layers of Dharma formations did not seem intense, but in fact there were many hidden dangers. One careless move and they would lose everything. The more the middle-aged man in a black robe fought, the more shocked he became. This was because he realized that the other party's Dharma formations cultivation was improving rapidly. In the beginning, he had an obvious advantage of 70 to 30%. Later on, his advantage was constantly being eroded. Soon, it was only 60 to 40%, and the gap was constantly shrinking. This meant that Dharma formations were not Ding Ruanfeng's original strength. However, he was confident that he could challenge the reincarnation sect's Hell Path's Yuanying sect elder, who specialized in Dharma formations in the Divine Land, with the Dharma formations. At this moment, Ding Runfeng suddenly looked to the other side, and his eyes lit up. I seem to have sensed the existence of a pure Yin body just now. The middle-aged man in a black robe was slightly shocked, and the spectators were all shocked. They did not expect that Ding Runfeng could be distracted to do other things while fighting with a Yuanying stage cultivator. The middle-aged man in a black robe thought to himself, from the looks of it, if everyone goes all out and fights to the death, I'm afraid the outcome is still uncertain. However, Ding Ruanfeng's line of sight swept back and forth among the crowd, and soon locked onto Luo Qingwu. After a careful look, a look of joy appeared on his face. She really has a pure Yin body. On the other side, his fellow disciple, the young lady in white, also had her gaze on Luo Qingwu. After a moment of observation, the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. She took light steps and instantly appeared in front of the little girl. The young lady in white said softly, "My name is Bai Shiqian. What's your name, sister? Have you joined a sect?" At this moment, the spectators' gazes all landed on the little girl. Bai Shiqian's words had already expressed one thing clearly. The Taishu temple had taken a fancy to this girl who looked like she was only in her teens. Thinking back to what Ding Runfeng had said earlier, everyone gasped. Could it be that other than Ding Runfeng, who has a pure yang body, the Taishu temple is going to accept another genius disciple with a pure yin body? Chapter 565. Bai Shiqian had a beautiful face and a delicate temperament. However, she was a direct disciple of Taishu temple, so no one dared to look down on her. She spoke softly, which made her seem gentle and polite. She was very approachable. She smiled faintly and looked at Luo Qingwu. She said softly, "Little girl, what's your name? Do you have a master?" The meaning behind Bai Shiqian's words was very clear. Taishu temple had the intention to accept Luo Qingwu as a disciple. The surrounding people stared at the little girl and sighed. This little girl is so lucky. She has such shocking talent as a pure yin body, and Taishu temple has taken a liking to her. She doesn't have to worry about anything for the rest of her life. She has a bright future. She has a bright future. Some people who thought deeper looked at Ding Runfeng, who was still fighting with the reincarnation sect's Hellpath's Yuanying stage patriarch. In the history of Taishu temple, there was once a disciple with a pure yang body and a disciple with a pure yin body who joined at the same time. After that, the two of them became Dao companions and helped each other. They achieved much more than ordinary cultivators with pure yang body and pure yin body. Could it be that Taishu temple is going to repeat that scene again? While Ding Runfeng was fighting with others, he would occasionally look over and look at Luo Qingwu. There was no special change in his expression. Bai Shiqian would not raise such a question to Luo Qingwu, who was only in her teens. She only looked at Luo Qingwu silently. The little girl blinked and said in a clear voice, "I've never had a master, but I learned Dao techniques from my parents and grandfather when I was young." "It's okay." Bai Shiqian smiled gently and said, "I also learned Dao techniques from my family when I was young." She stretched out her palm and gently held Luo Qingwu's little hand. "Little sister, have you heard of Taishu temple?" Luo Qingwu nodded. Bai Shiqian's smile grew wider. "Do you know what kind of physique you have?" "I know." Luo Qingwu glanced at Ding Runfeng. "It's the opposite of his physique." "That's right," Bai Shiqian smiled and said, "Then have you heard of the Clear Sky Pure Yin treasure record?" Luo Qingwu was at a loss and shook her head. A cultivator beside her could not help but say, "The Clear Sky Pure Yin treasure record is the opposite of the Pure Yang Mystic Heart technique from Taishu temple. It's the most suitable technique for cultivators with pure yin physique to cultivate. When the two are combined, the future is limitless." The surrounding cultivators were also amazed. They all felt that Luo Qingwu's luck was really off the chart. Not only was she born with a pure yin physique, but she was also able to meet a direct disciple of Taishu temple when she was out for a stroll. Other than her physique, this was also a heaven-defying opportunity. Some jealous people's eyes even reddened. Damn, having a good physique is really more important than anything else. Many people around them were amazed, but Bai Shiqian's face did not show any arrogance. Instead, she looked a little embarrassed. She looked at Luo Qingwu apologetically and said softly, "I'm sorry. How about this, let's go somewhere else to talk, okay?" Luo Qingwu looked embarrassed. She looked at Jun Zining next to her and slowly shook her head. Bai Shiqian asked considerately, "Are you worried about being separated from your family?" "It doesn't matter. I can take you to find them. There are some things I want to talk to them about." Luo Qingwu shook her head and said, "That's not necessary. My family is not in West Hill City." She paused and looked at Bai Shiqian with a smile. "Also, I can make the decision myself. There's no need to ask them." "This is not good?" Bai Shiqian smiled. Luo Qingwu shook her head and pointed to Jun Zining next to her. "If you don't believe me, you can ask her. She knows me." Jun Zining was slightly stunned. When she saw Bai Shiqian looking at her, she nodded and said, "Yes, she makes her own decisions now." When the people next to them heard this, they all smiled. This little girl either had a falling out with her family and sneaked out, or she's a little mischievous. She's already thinking of becoming a disciple of Taishu Temple and is afraid of missing this opportunity. After all, she has a chance to enter the world's #1 holy land. It's only right for her to make a prompt decision. It can be seen that this little girl is also very creative. Her future is limitless. Bai Shiqian's gaze turned from Jun Zining to Luo Qingwu. "Is that so?" Luo Qingwu nodded and said, "So, if I want to be a disciple, I can follow her back to the mountain immediately. I don't have to tell my family." Bai Shiqian gently held Luo Qingwu's little hand and said with a smile, "In that case, little sister, come with us. But you have to wait for a while. You have to wait until Senior Brother Ding's fight is over." Luo Qingwu gently tilted her little head. "But I didn't say that I want to be a disciple of Taishu Temple, nor did I say that I want to go back to the mountain with you." As soon as this statement came out, everyone was shocked. Ding Runfeng was distracted, and there was a mistake in the calculation of the formation. He was almost trapped by the opponent's formation. But he didn't have to worry because his opponent was also distracted. Everyone present looked at Luo Qingwu in surprise. Everyone's mind was full of question marks. What was this little girl thinking? Could it be that such a great fortuitous opportunity was going to be wasted for nothing? She was born with a pure Yin body, and her starting point was far higher than ordinary people. As long as she cultivated properly, her future cultivation path would be smoother than others. But having a high talent didn't mean that one would definitely become a talent. Potential could be transformed into strength, and only then would a genius become a strong person. In the long history of the Tianyuan world, there were countless geniuses, but in the end, those who could truly stand out were the minority. All kinds of factors affected the growth of a genius. A slight deviation could change a person's fate. Perhaps geniuses could still reach heights that ordinary people couldn't, but they might not be able to reach their own expectations, let alone surpass them. But all of this was not a problem for Taishu Temple. In terms of Taoism, there was the clear pure Yin treasure record, which was most suitable for a pure Yin body to cultivate. As for resources, White Cloud Mountain was one of the few cultivation holy lands in the Divine Land. The spiritual qi in the earth veins was abundant. Although it wasn't the best in the world, it wasn't far from it. In Taishu Temple, there were countless precious medicinal herbs and spiritual treasures. Many things were unique to White Cloud Mountain. As the #1 cultivation holy land in the Divine Land, the famous master teachers were countless, let alone those who lived in seclusion. In the temple, there were also countless ancient books that could be consulted. After entering Taishu Temple, the safety factor in the process of growing up was undoubtedly the highest in the human cultivation world. The situation outside of the temple was ever-changing, and one couldn't guarantee one's safety. But if one were to cultivate in seclusion in White Cloud Mountain, there was almost no possibility of death. All the conditions could be said to be extremely generous. The people present couldn't figure out what Luo Qingwu was not satisfied with. Bai Shiqian's smile didn't change. She looked at the little girl in red in front of her calmly. Whether Taishu Temple is good or not, It has nothing to do with me. The smile on Luo Qingwu's face gradually disappeared. She said very seriously, I already have a sect that I want to join. Someone next to her muttered, this little girl has no taste. Of all the choices, she might as well choose Taishu Temple. Luo Qingwu smiled slightly. There's no choice, and I don't need to make a choice. From the beginning to the end, I only want to join one sect, but not Taishu Temple. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding people couldn't help but be in an uproar. What Luo Qingwu meant was that Taishu Temple wasn't out of the picture in her mind, but that from the beginning, she didn't even consider joining Taishu Temple. Then what she said just now, didn't she mean to make fun of Bai Shiqian? Good heavens, daring to make fun of people from Taishu Temple. Either she's extremely daring, or the sect in her mind is not compatible with Taishu Temple. Bai Shiqian's eyes flashed, and she said softly, what you're saying, are you talking about Xianmen Tianzong? Luo Qingwu blinked her eyes. Sister, you recognized Xiao Wu from the beginning. Why do you ask now when you already know the answer? I still have some hope. Bai Shiqian sighed softly and didn't deny it. The Luo clan was the representative of the great Zhou dynasty in the ancient Yuan heaven realm. When Luo Qingwu fled from home, she was taken in by the great Zhou dynasty's crown prince, Chen Yu. Through the information from the Luo clan, Chen Yu and the great Zhou dynasty's crown prince, Liang Yuan, knew about the entanglement between the little girl and Xianmen Tianzong. Although Taishu Temple was secluded from the world, its intelligence-gathering ability was extremely strong. Xianmen Tianzong. Everyone came to a sudden realization, but then their imaginations ran wild. Xianmen Tianzong is actually so attractive that Taishu Temple took the initiative to accept a disciple, but they actually failed and couldn't compete with this newly rising sect? I see. At such a sensitive time, Taishu Temple's high-profile action this time was to suppress Xianmen Tianzong's momentum, so this little girl deliberately did it to embarrass Taishu Temple. It's just that I didn't expect her to have such a strong sense of belonging to Xianmen Tianzong at such a young age and hasn't even entered the sect yet. Bai Shiqian looked at Luo Qingwu and asked softly, has the master of Xianmen Tianzong agreed to accept you as a personal disciple? Luo Qingwu shook her head and said with a smile, even if I'm not Senior Lin's personal disciple, as long as I can become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, Luo Qingwu will be satisfied. If I want to become a disciple, I will only recognize Xianmen Tianzong. This is my wish and also my goal. Even if because of this completely cut off the road to joining Taishu Temple, it didn't matter. Hearing her say this, Bai Shiqian sighed again. In the distance, Ding Runfeng snorted and said indifferently, after 1,000 years, wind and rain, time will be the best standard to test everything. The difference between a meteor and a star is obvious. The master of Xianmen Tianzong is indeed a hero of a generation, but how Xianmen Tianzong actually is can only be seen in the future. Junior sister Bai, no need to say more. If she wants to waste her talent, that is also her fate. At this time, a tall youth walked out from the crowd and looked at Ding Runfeng and said seriously, what sire said, forgive me for not agreeing. He was dark and thin, very tall, with handsome facial features and bright eyes. He was not old, but his expression was rigid and meticulous. When Luo Qingwu and Jun Zining saw him, they both smiled. Brother Li. The youth was Li Yuanfang. He nodded at Luo Qingwu and turned his eyes back to Ding Runfeng. He said seriously, if fellow Luo wants to become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, her talent will definitely not be wasted. Sect Master Lin is a learned man. It's enough to just give some advice. Li Yuanfang's eyes fell on the formation where Ding Runfeng and the Hell Path's Yuanying ancestor were fighting. He said seriously, I'm not a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, but I'm also indebted to Sect Master Lin for a few days in the formation. I'm willing to ask fellow Daoist about the changes in the formation. Chapter 566. Ding Runfeng glanced at Li Yuanfang indifferently and ignored him. He did not respond to Li Yuanfang's words, obviously ignoring the existence of Li Yuanfang. He dared to challenge an opponent in the Yuanying stage when he was in the Golden Elixir period because he came from the Taishu Temple. He was born with a pure yang body and had amazing talent. He also practiced the pure yang mystic heart technique, a top-notch technique. Li Yuanfang was in the early stage of foundation establishment. Ding Runfeng already had an idea after a glance and did not bother to argue with him. A lion would respond to the provocation of tigers, leopards, jackals, and wolves. Even if a rabbit came to the bottom of its paw to make trouble, it would be killed with its paw. However, an ant coming to make trouble would not make the lion react at all. The onlookers also felt that Li Yuanfang was a little rash. If Li Yuanfang was Lin Feng's direct disciple, then he would challenge Ding Runfeng in the Golden Elixir period when he was in the foundation establishment stage. Everyone would more or less have some expectations, especially when the opponent was not an ordinary cultivator in the Golden Elixir period, but Ding Runfeng, who was recognized as the #1 sect in China and had extraordinary talent. Formations were not his specialty, but he could compete with the Yuanying stage elder of the Hell Path, who specialized in formations. Under the situation where the Yuanying stage elder did not use his supernatural power to suppress Ding Runfeng, he could not do anything to Ding Runfeng, let alone a mere foundation establishment stage cultivator. Moreover, this Li Yuanfang was not a disciple of Lin Feng. According to him, he was not even a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. Li Yuanfang looked calm. He was not annoyed by Ding Runfeng's attitude of ignoring him. He just silently watched Ding Runfeng and the Yuanying stage elder of the Hell Path fighting and changing formations. The 7th formation pattern, Yin advances and Yang retreats, Bing Chun advances Jia Hai, Gung Wu retreats Xin Chou. Li Yuanfang suddenly said. Most of the cultivators present did not understand what was going on, but the 3 Golden Elixir period disciples from the Naraka Tao of Hell shuddered at the same time. They took a closer look at the changes in the formation on the battlefield, and in the next moment, they gasped and turned to look at Li Yuanfang, who had a normal expression on his face, in shock. At the same time, a strange light flashed in the eyes of the black-robed middle-aged man who was fighting with Ding Runfeng. The formation did not change as Li Yuanfang had said. Among the onlookers, there were some who were more proficient in formations. They could vaguely see that if what Li Yuanfang said was true, there was an opportunity to restrain Ding Runfeng. The black-robed middle-aged man did not do as Li Yuanfang said, not because what Li Yuanfang said was wrong. In fact, almost at the same time when Li Yuanfang said that, he had also thought of this change. However, when Li Yuanfang said that, it was not convenient for him to take action. However, the black-robed middle-aged man was also secretly surprised. It was not surprising that he could see the flaws in Ding Runfeng's formation. After all, he had been immersed in the Tao of formations for thousands of years, and the reincarnation sect's Hell Tao was even more specialized in formations. However, Li Yuanfang, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, could see through it as well, and he was even slightly faster. This was truly shocking. Bai Shiqian's eyes also flickered slightly, and she looked at Li Yuanfang curiously. The 28th formation pattern, 4-6 revolutions, 7-1. The 9th formation pattern, Yin advances Yang retreats, GC advances Bing Wu, Jia Zi advances Bing Shen. The 135th formation pattern, Old Yin becomes Xiao Yang. The 87th formation pattern, Yin Qi increases by 30%, it can restrain the growth of the opponent's pure Yang. The black-robed middle-aged man ignored him, and Li Yuanfang didn't mind either. He just kept on speaking, and in the end, the speed of his speech became faster and faster, and his words became simpler and simpler, dealing with the ever-increasing changes in the array formation. The 29th, Yi Shin retreats Ren Hai, Yang Ding Zi advances Bing Yin. The 41st, Gui water qi increases by 1-fold. The 14th, 6 heavenly dipper forms lock. The surrounding people no longer spoke, and they all looked at Li Yuanfang in shock. The expressions of the people who knew about the changes in the formation became more and more solemn. At first, there were people who laughed at Li Yuanfang for entertaining himself, but when they saw that the people who knew about the formation were extremely serious, they gradually shut their mouth. Especially by Shiqian, who was from the same sect as Ding Runfeng, although her gaze was still gentle, when she looked at Li Yuanfang, her gaze was extremely solemn. This made everyone's hearts beat faster. Could it be that this fellow is not talking nonsense, but has real talent? But how is that possible? Li Yuanfang, who had already become the focus of everyone's attention, acted as if there was no one else around him. His right hand pinched his fingers and calculated, and his mouth continuously pointed out the changes in breaking Ding Ruanfeng's formation. The others did not know whether what Li Yuanfang said was right or wrong, but as the person involved, Ding Runfeng, could not be clearer. In fact, if it was not for the black-robed middle-aged man's identity, and many of the correct responses had been pointed out by Li Yuanfang, making it difficult for him to use them, Ding Ruanfeng's formation would have long been broken. The black-robed middle-aged man was also a formation expert, and he could also calculate many changes. He was only slightly slower than Li Yuanfang, but it was this slight difference. If he could seize the initiative, the situation would immediately change greatly. At this time, Ding Runfeng and the black-robed middle-aged man could no longer continue fighting, and he could no longer ignore Li Yuanfang. The two of them had a tacit understanding, and they both withdrew their formation and looked at Li Yuanfang together. The black-robed middle-aged man's gaze was also slightly gloomy. Although Li Yuanfang's actions were aimed at the Taishu Temple's Ding Runfeng, it had also made him lose face. However, Li Yuanfang's talent in formations still amazed the black-robed middle-aged man. It was true that if he and Li Yuanfang were to set up a formation now, the power of the formation would be several streets ahead of Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang's hundreds of formations stacked together would not be as powerful as one of his formations. But that was because of the huge gap between the two of them in terms of the realm and transcendence energy. Just by comparing the changes of the formation, this tall and thin black-robed kid in front of him could actually slightly beat him. "You just said that you are not a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong?" the black-robed middle-aged man asked in a deep voice. Li Yuanfang nodded and said very seriously, "This junior has only received some pointers from the master of Xianmen, and has not had the honor of worshipping under the entrance wall. I dare not call myself a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong." The black-robed middle-aged man snorted coldly. The master of Xianmen is really not an ordinary person. With just a little pointers, he has surpassed this old man's 1,000 years of hard work. Li Yuanfang shook his head. Senior Lin of Xianmen Tianzong is naturally a learned man. This junior has received pointers from him, and has learned a little bit about the Tao of formations. I only have some understanding of dealing with the changes of yin and yang, but I have not dabbled much in other aspects of formations. This was the truth. Lin Feng had intercepted some of the changes of the yin and yang life and death formation for him to learn, mainly from the changes of yin and yang in the 6 paths of life and death. Li Yuanfang was a strict and serious person, and he studied hard. He also had an outstanding understanding of the Tao of formations. During his time on the mountain, he had already learned some of the essence of the changes of yin and yang. Therefore, in terms of the changes of the yin and yang, he was even better than the black-robed middle-aged man. If it was the formation of other sects, it would not be comparable to the old ancestor of the hell path of Yuanying stage. Speaking of which, this was also Ding Ruanfeng's bad luck. The formations that he was proficient in were derived from the pure yang profound heart technique, and were top-notch pure yang formation transformations. Although he had deduced the changes of Yang Qi to the extreme, it was still within the scope of Li Yuanfang's expertise. Li Yuanfang's monotonous reply made the people around him laugh. But after laughing, they all felt shocked at the same time. He was not a direct disciple of Lin Feng, and he was not even listed as a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. He had only received pointers from Lin Feng, and yet he had such exquisite attainments in formations. It was really terrifying. What's even more terrifying is the master of Xianmen. Someone muttered to himself. The black-robed middle-aged man was also speechless. He thought to himself, I've long heard that the master of Xianmen has mastered a top-notch formation, and its mysteriousness is boundless. It is comparable to the mountain-guarding formation of the three sacred lands. It seems that the rumors are true. Even in formations, the master of Xianmen has deep attainment. Ding Runfeng stared at Li Yuanfang. His expression was still calm, but his gaze was focused. Slowly, he nodded. Very well, just like the senior from the Hell Path just now, I won't use the difference in transcendence energy to bully you. Let's compete in the transformations of formations. Although Li Yuanfang had repeatedly pointed out the flaws in the formation, Ding Runfeng was still confident. After all, there was a difference between an armchair strategist and a real battle. In a real battle, there were many factors that would affect the final outcome. Li Yuanfang naturally understood this, but he did not care. He immediately cupped his hands. Please enlighten me, brother. At the side, Bai Shiqian looked at the two people who were about to start fighting and suddenly asked, Brother Li, are you the disciple of Ancestor, he too of the Arctic Ice Sea? Li Yuanfang was slightly stunned. Bai Shiqian smiled and said softly, Shiqian observed that the method of calculating formations just now, although it is mysterious and varied, it seems that you are the disciple of Ancestor, he Tuesday. Am I right? Yes. Li Yuanfang nodded. Bai Shiqian said softly, Ancestor he too died in the Kuan Peng's treasury. It is truly a pity. Brother Li, please restrain your grief. A sad expression appeared on Li Yuanfang's face, but he heard Bai Shiqian continue, speaking of which, Brother Li still has some ties with our Taishu temple. Ancestor he too once met my master. Afterward, my master said that Ancestor he too's formation could be said to be the best among the rogue cultivators below the nascent divinity stage. Li Yuanfang looked up at her, frowned slightly, and did not speak. Bai Shiqian smiled softly. I wonder if Brother Li has seen your master's heaven-rising illusory clouds formation chart? Li Yuanfang was silent for a moment, then nodded. When Bai Shiqian mentioned the heaven-rising illusory clouds formation chart, he knew that she was not lying. Her master had indeed taught Ancestor, he too the Tao. Seeing this, Bai Shiqian and Ding Runfeng both smiled. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Li Yuanfang suddenly said, In that case, this is a rare opportunity. Please give me some pointers on the heaven-rising illusory clouds formation chart. The onlookers were stunned, and so were Bai Shiqian and Ding Runfeng. Li Yuanfang's calm gaze had already shifted from Ding Runfeng to Bai Shiqian. He did not forget Ancestor he too's teaching and nurturing. If it was another time, another place, and another situation, he would be very respectful to Bai Shiqian and Taishu Temple. But in the current situation, the other party was clearly using his kindness to suppress him, and it was purely with bad intentions. Li Yuanfang was a pure and stubborn person. The more the situation was like this, the more he would not give in. Lin Feng had also given him a new lease of life, and the other party had insulted Xianmen Tianzong, so he could not sit back and do nothing. Bai Shiqian sighed. Ding Runfeng said lightly, What I said before might have been a bit abrupt, but it should also be the responsibility of a true Xianmen Tianzong disciple. What position do you stand on, overstepping your authority and meddling in others' affairs? You are not a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, so what are you doing? Hearing this, Li Yuanfang's eyebrows suddenly twisted into a knot. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.